Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warmer from Evo, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Sean Paul, who does great work over at the Field of 68. Coupled with that, he's doing a solid job over there at Action Network. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's made out of the last few weeks in college basketball. We're going to take a look at a few games for Wednesday, and he also does the mid-major show over at the Field of 68, so certainly going to give some mid-majors a little bit of love, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Juden_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you are able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast side, that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Kentucky became a double-digit favorite without having Lamont Butler in the lineup, but they didn't need Lamont Butler in this one, and they didn't need the points. They win this game outright on the money line against Tennessee, this by a count of 78-73 for Kentucky. 12 of 24 from three-point range. In this one, Jackson Robinson, 17 points. He was able to help out the offense quite a bit, while Kobe Brea moved into the starting lineup. 18 points. He went 3 of 3 from 3 in Tennessee. 11 of 45 from the outside. Zakai Ziegler, 13 points on 18 shots, 6 assists. I mean, for Tennessee, they actually won the turnover battle 13-5, and they do win the rebound battle 41-38. But for Kentucky, they were able to hit their shots, and Tennessee flat out weren't able to. Tennessee still 13-8 against the spread this far this season, but less than savory effort out there. Pretty solid effort from Marquette. They get the win, and they do get the cover against Butler, 78-69, closing line of 8.5, so just barely get there. But for Marquette, on the road, they go 8 of 22 from three-point range. Stevie Mitchell led the way with 22 points, and for Marquette, they win that turnover battle 12-5. They do lose a rebound battle 35-30. A little bit of a concern here for Marquette as Jamile Telford had 24 points for Butler, but all in all, it was a Marquette team that found a way to be able to get the job done. And if you want to talk about wackadoo things in college basketball, how about this with Kansas knocking off Central Florida earlier in the month by 51 points, and at one point in the second half, they were trailing by, I believe, double figures to Central Florida. It might have been closer to 9, but Central Florida had the lead in the second half, 56 of 47. Kansas comes back. They do get the job done 91-87, but by no means was this a cover. And for Kansas, just a fourth over in 20 games that they played thus far this season. Keyshawn Hall, 34 points. For Central Florida, they go 14 of 36 from 3, 10 of 21 from distance for Kansas, and Kansas was able to win that rebound battle 48-36, but did lose the turnover battle 12-7 as Hunter Dickinson and Zeke Mayo both had 24 points, and the consecutive start streak for DeJuan Harris is now done. He did not play in this game, so did not hear too much about an injury to him, so we'll see what his status is moving forward for this Georgetown team. They've been one of your better teams against the spread out there in the Big East, and they've been a really good under team, and they got you the under on Tuesday, mainly because they just could not put a lot of points up on the board for Georgetown. Now 15 unders to 6 overs. They fall to St. John's 66 of 41 the final in this one, as for Georgetown, 6 of 26 from three-point range. They lose the turnover battle 16 of 14. They actually hold in there on the glass 39-37, but they shot 24.5% from the floor for St. John's. They go 28 of 58 from the field, with Zuby Ejiofor supplying the team with 13 points, 9 rebounds. So very nice, dominant, convincing win there. This has also been a very good team to the under, though. How about the unders that you've been able to get in St. Louis games? As 78-69, they take down VCU. This was one of their very rare overs, as this just barely creeps over the closing total of 145.5. And for VCU, they've been a pretty rock-solid team here all season long, but 5 of 31 from three-point range, that'll doom you in. For the St. Louis team, they go 30 of 39 at the free throw line. 27 called fouls on VCU. They had had 3 different guys fall out of this game, so that was a little bit rough for them. As for St. Louis, Gibson Jimerson give the team 26 points, and hilariously, Robbie Avila, he's able to get to 14 points, but into those points came at the free throw line, and St. Louis did lose the turnover battle 17-8, but they do win the game in this one, and also being able to get a nice W, and another team has been able to do a good job to the under. Georgia, 15 unders to 6 overs for them. They do take down South Carolina, this by a count of 71-60. As for Georgia, they go 7-15 from 3, just 4 of 17 for South Carolina. South Carolina loses that turnover battle 17-12, and another nice performance from Asanuel, 17 points, 10 boards, 3 blocks. So I have to like to see that, and I have to like to see this as well if you're a fan of the unders. Kent State, the Golden Flashes, now 14 unders to 4 overs. They take down Bowling Green 75-57, and for Kent State, they've been one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, but on the day, they go 10 of 22 from 3, 7 of 26 for Bowling Green, and for Bowling Green, they do lose that rebound battle 33-29, and they play even up with regards to turnovers, but Cameron Davis, 24 points for Kent State. They find a way to claw that game out. If you're looking in the MAC, though, you've had a few teams that have been very good to the over, mainly the schools out there in Ohio, in Miami of Ohio and Ohio. Ohio, 13 overs, 5 unders, and a push. Miami of Ohio, 13 overs and 5 unders of their own, and for the Ohio Bobcats, they were without a few key pieces, including A.J. Clayton, and they do lose to Toledo by a count of 86-83. They cash for another over on the total of 162.5, but for Ohio, another A.J. Brown stepped up in this game. For them, he was able to supply the team with 22 points, but for Toledo, they go 7-16 from 3-point range. Ohio actually wins the turnover battle 9-5, but they lose the rebound battle 40-33, as every single starter for Toledo able to score in double figures. So they get the job done in Miami of Ohio. They play an over, and they do get the job done outright against Eastern Michigan and just barely get the cover. This was an opening number of 10.5. A lot of places closed it at an 8.5, 89-80 final in this one. As for Miami of Ohio, 9 of 19 from 3. Eastern Michigan, they do go 10 of 23 from the outside, and for this Miami of Ohio team, Antoine Wolfberg, double-double, 21 points, 10 rebounds, so pretty rock-solid performance out there, and very intriguing what we've been able to get in that conference thus far this season, as this has been a team that has been a relatively good cover team for you all season long. As if you've been looking at this team to be able to make you money, they've been very good. Oregon State, 16-5 against the spread to begin the night, but they get absolutely bludgeoned against Gonzaga. Gonzaga able to get the job done by a kind of 98-60. This is a game that does certainly fly over the total line. For Oregon State, just 6 of 23 from 3. Meanwhile, for Gonzaga, off the bench, K-Leaf battle, 12 of 13 at the free throw line, 23 points. Graham Ike, he had 22 points, and he had 16 points in the first 12 minutes of this game. Gonzaga was able to put this one out of reach very, very early. They won the rebound battle 38-32. So Gonzaga now 8-13 against the spread. It's been a little bit of a less than savory year for them against the spread, but starting to pick it up a little bit more as things go along. This team was able to pick it up on Tuesday as well. How about Michigan State taking down Minnesota, who had been hot against the spread? They had covered their last 4 games or something like that, but they just get completely destroyed on this night. 73-51, the final for Michigan State. They go 8 of 25 from 3. They still had their issues shooting it from 3, but for Minnesota, you had Dawson Garcia give you 21 points. Nobody else scored in double figures. Minnesota loses the rebound battle 40-22, and the rebound battle, that was big, but at the same time, they also lost the turnover battle 12-9 as well. So, less than savory performance out there. For Oklahoma, it's been rough sledding for them. They've won just one SEC conference game, but they do get the cover against Texas A&M as about 8-point underdogs. 75-68 the final for A&M. They go just 4 of 24 from 3. Oklahoma does go 10 of 22 from 3-point range, and they actually win the turnover battle 13-12, but they lost the rebound battle. I'm not even kidding here. 47-19. Farrell Payne along with Anderson Garcia by themselves at 23 rebounds. 4 more rebounds than what you had for Oklahoma. Oklahoma had Bryson Gudine along with Jalen Moore be able to combine for 46 points. So that tells you where the scoring came from. But hey, you know what? They were able to get a cover out there, and sometimes that is all that matters. And out there in the Big East, it's been very tumultuous. What we've seen out of Seton Hall, they have not been a moneymaker for you, but they do cover the number of right around about 3.5 against Providence. 69-67, Providence gets the job done, but Seton Hall, they are able to get a rare over for them, and they're able to get a cover. Right now, your worst cover team in the Big East, by the way, is actually UConn at 8-11-1 against the spread, while St. John's, your best cover team, at 13-7-1 against the spread. Out there in the ACC, there have not been too many trustworthy teams against the spread in this conference, but Louisville has been that for you now. 13-8 against the spread. They get the job done against Wake Forest. This by a count of 72-59 as Wake Forest 3-point shooting woes. They actually were, I guess you call it, rectified a little bit more in this game. 8 of 21 from 3, but lost a turnover battle 15-9. And for this Louisville team, you were able to have Terrence Edwards on your side, being able to fly you with 18 points, and Rain Smith also went 4 of 10 from 3. Louisville, once again, shooting less than 30% from 3-point range overall for the season at home, but do find a way to persevere, and they do find a way to get the job done out there. Also being able to find a way to persevere and being able to get the job done if you're looking against the spread and straight up. St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies, have been one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball. Started out so hot. I believe that they started off 12-0 against the spread. It's been a departure from that, but still 15-6 against the spread. They do get the win in very easy fashion against Dayton. This by kind of 75-53 as Dayton allows St. Bonaventure to go 12 of 25 from 3-point range. St. Bonaventure gave guys minutes off the bench. Yay, verily there, as they win the turnover battle 7-6. I think that Dr. Schmidt is realizing, hey, let's not throw out our guys for 40 full minutes, as they won the rebound battle 36-27 as well. So very good performance there as they do find a way to be able to get the job done, and also being able to get the job done. Arizona State, they go on the road and they take it to Colorado. This by a count of 70-68. It has not been a great year, to say the least, for Colorado. For that matter, Arizona State has fallen back to the pack just a little bit, but Colorado now 7-13 against the spread, as for Arizona State, just 7 of 22 from 3-point range, but better than Colorado's 4 of 17 from the outside. Arizona State loses that turnover battle 17-12, but they had on their side, Mr. Adam Miller was able to supply the team with 18 points, just enough to be able to get the job done out there, and they are now Arizona State 13-7 against the spread straight up. Things have been a little bit more on the fritz, but they've done a solid job there, and this has been a Baylor team that has not been making a lot of money either. 7-11-1 against the spread. They do take BYU to overtime. BYU, the 3.5-point favorite, manages to cover in overtime, and they legitimately led the entire way. This was a 93-89 final, and I can tell you, I wrote up the over, and the over, that had cash in regulation. So just because the game went to overtime doesn't mean that it was a bad beat to the under, because, man, that thing was completely toasted, with Baylor going 13 of 28 from 3. VJ Edgecombe had himself a performance, 28 points on 6 of 8 3-point shooting, but for BYU, they themselves go 8 of 21 from the outside. For BYU, they and Baylor play even up on the glass, but they won the turnover battle 13-10, and for BYU, they go 21 of 26 at the free throw line to be able to find a way to persevere, get the job done. And for North Carolina, it's been a little bit of a less than savory year for them. They take another loss, this one to Pittsburgh by a count of 73-65, and all of a sudden UNC is 13-9 straight up against the spread, just 7-14-1. That has been less than tremendous, to say the least. And for Pittsburgh, 10-10 against the spread, so nothing great, nothing terrible. Pittsburgh 9 of 26 from 3-point range, and RJ Davis, he gave the team 16 points, and he shot 3 of 6 from 3. The rest of the guys around him just couldn't necessarily supply a whole heck of a lot of anything else. So for North Carolina, it's been a little bit rough for them, to say the least, and this has been a team out there in the ACC that has been able to make it just a little bit of money thus far this season. And Notre Dame at 10-9-1 against the spread, but unable to cover against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech now 8-13 against the spread, 71-68. Notre Dame gets the win, and Notre Dame, they go 10 of 23 from 3-point range compared to Georgia Tech at 5 of 16 from the outside. But for Georgia Tech, they hold in there on the glass. They win the turnover battle 10-8, and for Georgia Tech, 20 points out of Nathan George, the main point guard for this team, was able to keep them very lively in this one. And then you did see San Diego State has been a little bit rough, to say the least, recently. They do find a way to come back and knock off San Jose State. They were down at 1.21 in this one as they win by a count of 71-68. It was a really hot shooting night from San Jose State, who gets the cover. They are now 15-4 against the spread, by the way, and San Jose State 15 of 31 from 3-point range. Josh Udozie had 16 points in the first half, cooled off after that, but Magoon Guath was the bailout guy for San Diego State in this one. 24 points, 7 boards, at 7 feet tall, went 3 of 6 from 3-point range. If you like me at the under, you're a little bit salty about this one, but that said, San Diego State, they do find a way to persevere. They're now below 500 against the spread, though, so we'll see what they're going to be able to do moving forward. And this was rough if you had Fresno State with the points. Fresno State, 8.5 or so point underdog. They go to overtime, and I mean, legitimately, Wyoming was leading this game by double figures. They make a bonsai charge at the end, and they used up all that energy in terms of making that charge in the late second half that they saved nothing for overtime. 83-71 72. Fresno State loses this game. They don't cover as an 8.5-point underdog in overtime as they go 5 of 22 from 3 in Wyoming. 17 out of 36 from the outside to be able to mitigate the fact that they lost a rebound battle 38-35 and lost a turnover battle 18-15. So lots of fun, frivolous behavior out there in college basketball on Tuesday. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, we have been seeing things be very overwhelming recently in college basketballs. Right now, the over rate for the season is about 50.3%, 1,725 overs to 1,707 unders. And for home teams, been a little bit of a rough run for them thus far this season at less than 49.5% against the spread, 1694, 1732, and 52 against the spread. And then if you're looking at specifically underdogs, they've been cashing at darn near 51%, 1,745, 1,781, and 52 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you look at just the last 7 days in college basketball, overs hitting at about 50.3%, 163 overs to 161 unders. Meanwhile, the home teams, they have been really taking it on the chin recently. They have been able to rebound just a little bit, 161, 159, and 7 against the spread. Last week, they hit at like a 45% clip. So we're starting to see things be balanced out there, and the underdogs hitting at about 51.2% over the last 7 days, 164, 156, and 7 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Now let's take a look at Wednesday's games, some mid-majors, and so much more with Sean Paul, who does such great work over at the Field of 68. Next, right here on Let's Get Seats with myself, Xavier Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Custom Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as Sean Paul. He does a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's over there at the Field of 68 with another one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, doing their mid-major show. Additionally, I know that he's doing some great work over at Action Network and so many other platforms. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Sean Paul CBB. That is SEAN, the proper spelling on Sean. And Sean, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always, Greg. Glad to join you, and definitely the Mid-Major podcast, definitely something that Rocco and I enjoy doing. Make sure to check that out if you haven't.
Absolutely. And Sean, just what have you been making out of the mid-major landscape in college basketball? Because certainly I think that there's going to be a difficulty in terms of getting a lot of two-bid leagues with regards to these mid-majors. But regardless, I have found teams out there in conferences like Conference USA, Big West, to be playing some very high-quality basketball this season.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting year for mid-major basketball. For instance, I think everybody, including myself, thought we would be in for a down year in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is typically, if not the number one typical one-bid league. It's up there, and I thought a lot of people expected a big-time shift in them struggling this year with Josh Schertz going to St. Louis, with Darian DeVries going to West Virginia, but instead Ben McCollum has Drake with only 2 losses at this point. Bradley, kind of the same deal. They've been terrific. They only have 3 losses. Both those teams have a legitimate case for making the NCAA tournament as an at-large team. They're both really, really good teams. Bradley's the second best three-point shooting team in the country, and they've been an elite defensive team over the last 7 or 8 games. I think the Missouri Valley, being what it has been so far this year, is kind of one of the biggest storylines for me.
Yep, absolutely. The Missouri Valley has been a lot of fun. And just what do you make out of the different styles in that conference? Because you've got one team in Indiana State that's looking to run it and gun it. Drake is one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. Northern Illinois has gotten back to their roots. They used to be a super slow team back when they were making a whole bunch of NCAA tournament appearances. They've gone back to that as well. And I think that that's so much fun to take a look at really the chess match and the different styles in the conference now.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you go and have a team like Indiana State, like you said, and you have a team like UIC under Rob Eisen, who's done a great job so far turning that program around. They're 13-7. They have a win over Drake this year, coming off a tough loss at home to Southern Illinois. That was a rough one, but they competed on the road against Belmont. That was a loss. They almost beat Bradley at home. So they've had a lot of close games that could have shifted in either direction, and they're probably the toughest team that I really would not want to face once Arch Madness gets here, outside of the Northern Iowa, the Drake, the Bradley, outside of that top 3, I think the one team I'd really want to avoid facing is the UIC Flames, because Coach Eisen's done an awesome job, and that big man duo can really give people some problems because Philip Scoball and Sassiani. Those two are really good together. They're both versatile, and I think that makes them a lot more dangerous. And they have some good guards, Jordan Mason, Ty Freeman at that wing spot, Javen Jackson, who was on Utah State last year. They have a lot of pieces. They don't really have a star, but they have a lot of pieces that can fill different roles, and they play up tempo as well. They shoot a lot of threes, and they have a lot of size. So I think that makes them a very dangerous squad as well.
Oh, I think that there's a lot of dangerous teams out there in Conference USA. As you're speaking my language here, as we've got Sean Paul who does such great work over at the Field of 68. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And with regards to Conference USA, we're going to be seeing most of these teams taking the floor on Thursday. But that said, I've been very intrigued by what I've been seeing out of UTEP. They've hit a little bit of a rough go of it recently, but still at 15-5. They're a team that generates a bunch of turnovers. You mentioned Liberty, always very slow, always very controlled. You've got the Bacho man and Daniel Bacho for Louisiana Tech. Just how do you size up this conference and what we're going to be seeing the next few weeks? Because I was talking about the wide range of styles over in the Missouri Valley Conference. You brought up Conference USA, and I'm just so intrigued by all these teams in the conference.
It's a really interesting league, and I think a lot of people thought the Conference USA downfall would be pretty drastic once North Texas and UAB and Louisiana Tech still there, but those two and Charlotte and all those others that went to the AAC departed. And to some extent, that is true because you're not going to get a multi-bid league out of the CUSA probably ever. But anybody can win the league, I guess. Like, literally nobody winning the league would be much of a surprise. Like, you have Liberty, who's the top dog according to Ken Palm, but I don't think anybody would be surprised if Middle Tennessee won it, or if Louisiana Tech won it, who was a preseason favorite, or even if Sam Houston won it, who's 1-7 in conference play. But that team has lost a ton of single-digit games, and they are a very talented, well-coached team. Their defense has not been very good this year, but they shoot the three ball really well. Lamar Wilkerson is a stud, so on the right night, Sam Houston State can really catch you off guard. But the one team that really stands out to me is Jacksonville State. I think they have been very underrated, and they're really hot right now. 4 straight wins. Jaron Pierre has been one of the best transfer additions at the mid-major level. He's had quite the interesting journey to get to this point because he started at Southern Miss, then he transferred to Wichita State, and then he did like part of a year at an NAIA school last year, and then he transferred to Jacksonville State. So it's been quite the journey for him to get here, but he's a top 5 scorer in the country in points per game. They have a ton of guard help aside, same with Corey Cotton, Jowie Tuca, and they have some bigs too with Mason Nicholson. He's been very solid, and Marcellus Brigham. So this Jacksonville State team might be one of the more dangerous teams to watch when it comes to conference tournament time in CUSA.
They're such an interesting team because they play make it and take it style basketball, as I like to call it, because they are not going to force any turnovers whatsoever, but they're just going to beat you because they're going to grab the rebound on your first miss. They're not going to allow you to get second and third chance opportunities, and they themselves are just going to can their shots as well with Pierre and company. So that has been a great team to be able to watch, as we do have our good friend Sean Paul, who does great work over at the Field of 68, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and no doubt we're going to have some great action out there. But let's take a look at a little bit of what we're going to be getting on Wednesday, as well as we're going to get a lot of Big 12. We're going to get a lot of Big 10. We're going to be seeing a few Big East games as well. And just what do you make out of the landscape of college basketball with regards to more of these power conference teams? Because I just take a look at the SEC, going to have another just slobber knocker of a matchup between Alabama and Mississippi State. And that league has just become a gauntlet at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this SEC, I think it's a historically good conference this year. I don't know if there's probably numbers to back that up, but I mean, just every single night, it seems like one of these teams near the bottom of the conference is able to compete with the top of the conference team, and all the top of the conference teams dominated all the other top conferences in the country. So I think that really speaks to how good and how deep the SEC is. I mean, you look at South Carolina, they've been so close to winning several, like realistically, that team could have 4 conference wins right now. They could be 4-3 in conference play and really be in play for an NCAA tournament bid. They led Vanderbilt late, but lost that one. They led Florida late and lost that one. Came back against Mississippi State the other day and did end up winning that one. There was another one they were up late and lost to. They had a chance to tie Auburn late. So realistically, this team could be 4-3 in league play and be in the tournament conversation. Instead, they're 0-7 and sitting in last place in the conference. And if you put them in the ACC, it's probably a top 4 team in the league.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that the just divide between these leagues is as big as I've ever seen it, because you mentioned it with the ACC. Certainly, Duke has looked rock solid. Wasn't necessarily the most savory of performances that we saw over the weekend, but I mean, they've been able to do a nice job of being able to prove their might, but I mean, outside of them, it's been like Louisville has looked relatively good recently. They've been able to get on a nice little bit of a run, and you've obviously got North Carolina is going to be facing off with them over the weekend. But I mean, it's just been a big giant hodgepodge, and it's been a lot of disappointment in an ACC where their Achilles heel year in and year out has been these teams getting off to bad starts and then knocking off the top teams. And I fear that that might happen once again here in late January and early February.
Yeah, it definitely could happen because there's not a lot of true NCAA tournament level teams that are comfortable about their position right now. It's probably Duke, it's probably Louisville, and then not a whole lot else. I mean, I think I'm missing one more in there, but there's just not a whole lot of comfortable tournament teams in that league. I mean, Clemson maybe has a decent shot right now, but besides that, just not a lot there. I mean, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, I don't think either of those teams should feel very good about their tournament chances. Pittsburgh's resume is not great. I believe they're 4-4 in conference play. Wake Forest, I think, is probably has a little bit of a better chance than some of the other teams that are ranked higher in Ken Palm, just because Wake Forest doesn't blow teams out just the way they play this year. They're a great defensive team, but they can't score. They can't shoot the ball. I think they're a better team than like an SMU, for instance. But Stanford, I mean, they've been one of the more impressive teams in the conference with Maxime Reynaud and Ozias Sellers and Jalen Blakes. They've been mighty impressive in conference play, but I think they just don't have a lot of top end teams in that league besides Duke. It's Duke and nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's a really rough state of affairs out there. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get out there. And meanwhile, in the Big Ten, it just continues to be a conference where you got a bunch of solid teams. I recognize that Michigan State is right now the top dog because they have yet to lose inside the conference, but they played a very soft schedule. They're going to be really seeing that ratchet up in February as well. And I take a look at the Big Ten and really sans Michigan State, there's a lot of teams where I feel like with the right matchup, they might be able to make a little bit of a run in March. But then if they get like the wrong draw as well, you could have a lot of teams being one and done too.
Yeah, I know Illinois is probably one of the more polarizing teams in the country. They're 10th in Ken Palm, but they have not played very well lately, and you can attribute some of that to health. Kasparis Yakushonis missed a game against USC. Tomislav Ivicic has mono, and he's missed the last couple of games, but I mean, we've seen other players with mono struggle to come back for a while, and then they're not the same after. That's happened quite a few times in the last couple of years, so I'm curious to see what Ivicic looks like when he comes back. And obviously, not having him is a big missing piece, but I also think it speaks to Illinois being so reliant on Yakushonis and Ivicic to where it's putting all these other guys like Kylan Boswell and Ben Humrickhouse in bigger positions than they're probably ready to have for a team like Illinois, who, if they're truly contending for a Final Four bid, can you really have Kylan Boswell and Ben Humrickhouse be your third and fourth best players? I don't really think so. So I think when it comes down to it, Illinois has a lot of missing pieces. They're just not a true top 10 Final Four caliber team from a talent perspective. The two international recruits are awesome, but I think they're really lacking roster wise besides those two.
Yep, think that that's going to be a little bit of an undoing for them as well. And Kylan Boswell has been playing a little bit better, so we'll give a little bit of credit where it's due. He's been picking it up a bit more, but I mean, I just take a look at what we're going to be getting on Wednesday as well. And I think the most intriguing team to me is Maryland because their metrics are actually relatively good. They're like a top 30 team in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but it feels like in those step up games, they get exposed a little bit. They're going to be playing against Wisconsin. What do you make out of really both of these teams? Because with Wisconsin, they do the little things very well. Number one in the country in terms of free throw shooting percentage. But again, it does feel like with Wisconsin, even though the offense has been much better than it has been in past years, and no longer are they playing at a rate of like 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, it still feels like there's that missing ingredient for them too.
Yeah, I mean, having Jacoby Gillespie is huge because when you're replacing a guy like Jameer Young, it's tough to replace that production. But Gillespie's been awesome. He's such a speedy guard and knows how to get to his spots. He's a really good player, and Kevin Willard made a good splash for that one. But I'll always be skeptical on teams who play two true bigs. Yeah, I don't think it really can win you a national championship nowadays because you have two bigs who can't shoot the basketball. Derek Queen is 2 for 22 from three this year. He should probably just stop shooting threes because he clearly cannot do it very well. And Julian Reese, I think, is having his production cut into a little bit because having Queen there, teams can sag off of both of them because they know neither of them can shoot. Now, if you sag off Queen too much, he's quick and he can get to the basket on you, but Reese, he's a good player, but I think he needs to be the number one big in his offense to be able to have the production to be an all Big Ten guy, which he's very capable of doing, but he's not going to do it with Queen next to him. And it's been good to see Selton Miguel shoot it better of late. Rodney Rice obviously shot it better, hit that game winner against Indiana. But if Indiana had a actual good college basketball coach and players who knew how to play defense and, not make mistakes late, that would have been a loss for Maryland. But overall, I do think this Maryland team is solid. I think their best ingredient is being able to force turnovers and run in transition. I don't love them in a half-court offense, though, just because of the too big situation.
Yep, no doubt about it. That is a little bit of a rough ordeal. Very good in terms of making sure that you get one and dones on the other end, not allowing teams to get offensive rebounds, but certainly can be a little bit of a liability in terms of running a little bit of pace. As Sean Paul, he does such great work over at the Field of 68. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're doing this just ahead of the games for Wednesday, but is there any sort of matchups that you're taking a look at that you're very intrigued by, whether that be on Wednesday, whether that be on Thursday? Because certainly we're going to have a few ranked on ranked matchups. We've got Houston trying to be able to just get past that double overtime win against Kansas and not have a slip up against West Virginia. That's always a tough road trip. LSU is going to be hosting Auburn, so there's a lot out there. Anything that's really catching your attention in particular?
Yeah, I would say Furman against Samford is one that kind of stands out over there in the SoCon. Furman, I did think they were going to struggle a bit in conference play compared to where they were in the non-conference, and that's come to light a little bit. They're 4-4 in Southern Conference play, and the real reason I thought they would struggle is because they really only have two scorers, DJ Smith and Nick Anderson. That's pretty much where most of their scoring comes from. They don't have a lot of shooting threats besides those two, and they shoot a ton of threes, so it's hard to really trust this offense. And they're so good defensively, but facing a team like Samford, that's a really tough team because they're going to press for 40 minutes. They have a ton of talent. They have a lot of depth. Jaden Brownell has been a great add for Samford. 14 points per game in just 19 minutes per game. They featured him a little bit more offensively. Obviously, that's tough with their style because nobody plays more than 27 minutes per game because they're pressing for the entire 40. But he could easily average like 18 or 19 points if he was a featured player in a half-court offense. He's a really special offensive talent. Trey Fort's been good this year. Rylan Jones, Colin Holloway, Riley Allen Spock, the top five scorers are all really good players. Facing that Furman team, that could be tough because that's just a tough place to play in. Furman does have that talent, and they will probably try to slow this game down a bit compared to where Samford wants to play in transition the whole time. But if Samford loses that game, that would put them at 7-2 in league play, with UNCG nipping on their heels at 6-2, Chattanooga and Wofford and ETSU at 5-3. So a lot can change with that game if Samford loses it.
Yep, that certainly can be a big giant game changer. I'm right there with you. And just what do you make out of Auburn right now as well? Because in my opinion, this test against LSU on Wednesday is not going to be quite as easy as a lot of people want to make it out to be. But we saw them get the job done in a game where neither team got to 55 against Tennessee. But I still look at them and I still see the top team in all of college basketball, especially with Broom coming back much earlier than I was expecting personally.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn, I think, is one of the best teams, obviously, in the country. I would put Iowa State, Duke, and Auburn in a tier by themselves. Even though Houston is ahead of Iowa State and Ken Palm, I do think that Iowa State is a better team. Auburn is really interesting because we've seen Tahad Pettiford get a lot better as the season has rolled on, and I think he needs to start playing more. I know they have a lot of pieces besides him, and maybe that cuts into Denver Jones's minutes a little bit, but when you have a guy like Tahad Pettiford who could just be the absolute alpha scorer, I think it helps that offense out in a lot of different ways because right now, when the offense is in a tough position, it's get the ball to Janai Broom. That's not a bad option because he's a National Player of the Year candidate. I don't know if you can really trust Denver Jones to go get you a bucket late in the shot clock and create something. He's a good player, but I think it's asking a lot of him. I think putting the ball into Todd Pettiford's hands a lot more will lead to good results for this Auburn offense. And he's not a great defender, but they have enough great defenders besides him to where they can make up for some of his mistakes. And he's a freshman, he's young, he's not very tall, so I think some of those mistakes will come and go. But when you look at that interior with Janai Broom and Dylan Cardwell, I don't know how anybody scores on them because they're both great rim protectors. It's going to be really tough to beat them in an NCAA tournament setting because you're not going to be able to score inside. You're going to have an outlier shooting performance because they're pretty good at defending the perimeter as well. And as we saw, they came back to beat Iowa State earlier in the year. This is just a really good team from top to bottom, and they don't really have very many weaknesses that stand out.
No, they really don't. And it's been impressive what we've been seeing out of Auburn all season long. But one thing that's been even more impressive is your insight, Sean. You do such a tremendous job over at the Field of 68, along with Action Network, taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball. Let the good people at home know it's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, Action Network, you'll see a lot of my work there. Follow me on Twitter at Sean Paul CBB. Believe the same on TikTok, so go follow me on both those platforms. As long as TikTok is still with us here, I don't know if that's going to be a thing. It seems like an everyday mystery if TikTok will still be with us. We're really playing on borrowed tomorrow time. So follow me on there until it disappears again. But yeah, thanks to Greg for having me on. I always enjoy coming on.
Absolutely. Sean does an absolutely tremendous job and might need to get you on Instagram at some point if TikTok
I thought
does
about
go.
that, but I was like, man, I haven't done the whole Instagram thing regularly since I was like 10 years ago. So I feel like that would be kind of a tough transition. I feel like it's a lot different. Like I have an account, but it's very seldom used by me.
Hey, we can get some of the vintage Sean Paul pictures. I'm sure that's exactly what the nation
No, those
wants
old
to
school
see.
pics are long gone. Thank God. Yeah, those are long gone.
Well, that would have been a nice little bonus to say the least. But you know what? What is always nice is getting Sean on this program as he does such an amazing job taking a look at this game of college basketball. So big thanks to Sean for joining me on Cuz Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we have some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Sean Paul. He does such great work over at the Field of 68. Additionally, Action Network taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such good insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Sean for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GNet_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first. The games that are on the extra games board involve the smaller conferences. This involves the MEAC, the SWAC, the Patriot League, the Big South, the Atlantic Sun, the America East. If we have anything in this conference, the NEC as well. So that'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. And how about if we do get things started with 663, 664 on the card? Sam Amford, they are going to be on the road facing off against Furman. And Furman right now finds themselves as a home underdog of a point, seeing a pick'em line out there as well. And the total on this game, it is 150. Do you think that this game actually gets slowed down a little bit? I said my total 146. I'm going to be in on the under. You do have a Furman team that's now well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. And it has been a Furman team that has been actually relatively rock solid with regards to their defense. They have ascended into a top 175 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Samford, it's a hit or miss defense. They're overall 155th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's all geared around being able to generate turnovers. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And if they don't generate that turnover, they do leave themselves very open to some wide open threes. As Samford, they're allowing opponents to shoot a little bit over 33% from three-point range away from home. This has been a Furman team that they themselves have been actually a pretty solid three-point shooting defense, top 100 in all of college basketball, and that's where the bread is buttered for Samford with regards to their offense. As you have each of your top 5 scorers right now shooting north of 37% from three-point range, but this is a Samford team that they do a nice job cranking it up tempo, albeit this has been a team that's been turning the ball over about 13 times per contest. They're a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, but you've got a pair of guys in Jaden Brownell, Trey Fort. These two guys both shoot north of 40% from 3. They've been able to supply the team with a combined about 28.5 points per contest. I have to like what I'm seeing as well out of Ryland Jones. 5.8 assists at 2.2 turnovers per game. He's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range, being able to help this team just operate very cleanly in general. And for the Samford team, it as a whole is greater than some of its parts sort of approach with them, as you've got 10 different guys that do see at least 11.5 minutes per contest, so they just come at you wave after wave. And for Furman, this was a team that was getting some, shall we say, good shooting luck towards the beginning part of the season, I think is a proper way of being able to put it. You've had P.J. Smith be that rock-solid scorer for the team, 16.5 points per contest, shooting north of 43% from three-point range overall. Nick Anderson has been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest. And then Garrett Hine, Cooper Bowser, a pair of guys that give you about 5 boards, and Bowser does give you a block and a half per contest. But Furman, not necessarily the world's most stout team down low, despite the fact that they do have a rebounding edge a little bit on Samford in this game. I do think that Samford finds a way to be able to generate some turnovers, gets the job done in this game, as I did set my line at 2.5. But I do think that it's going to be a slow down game against the Furman team that's been pretty rock solid at being able to guard the arc. So did set my total 146.5. Do like the under, and I do like Samford on this rather pick 'em line / as a 1-point favorite. 665, 666 on the card. You've got Old Dominion on the road facing off against Appalachian St. And App State is an 11 to an 11.5 point favorite. And 129.5 to 130 is the total, and did semi total at a 125.5. I'm in on the under. You've got an Appalachian St team that is playing at one of the slower tempos in all of college basketball, and Old Dominion just can't get out of their own way with regards to their offense. This team is well outside the top 280 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Old Dominion just not getting anything going from the outside. 361st in all of college basketball with regards to the three-point shooting percentage. Appalachian State is actually shooting it quite well from three, especially at home. At home, they're shooting 42.3% from three-point range, but they play a very slow and controlled style, and the defense has really been able to buckle down with this Appalachian State team as well. They're back inside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and if you just take a look at what this team has been able to do in terms of conference play, in terms of just conference play and conference play only, top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in all of college basketball. So I've been very impressed there. It is an Old Dominion team that has been better on the defensive side of things rather than offense, that's for sure, because it can't be a whole heck of a lot worse on the offensive side of things, but still 247th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do have a little bit of size down low. Callum Swinton-Roger, he comes in as a 7-footer that was over at Maryland to begin his career. He's been able to give the team about a block and a half, 5+ rebounds per game, and then they've been relying upon Robert Davis, Lance John, Drew Gordon to be able to supply the team with the offense. These two guys have been able to combine for just under 30 points per contest, with Davis shoots 37.5% for three, but he is truly the lone guy on the roster that has attempted more than a three thus far this season that is shooting above 29% from three-point range, so that has been a little bit less than tremendous. I do think that for Appalachian State, they certainly are going to be able to get this game slowed down a little bit more, especially with Old Dominion obliging themselves, who are in 30th in the country in terms of total possessions, bringing Appalachian State 357th, but you do have all sorts of versatility with C.J. Hundley, who stands right in their neighborhood, about 6'10". He's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range. He's supplying the team with 15.5 points per contest, throws in there 7 boards, and then Miles State has been a nice stat sheet for 5.5 assists, 5.2 rebounds, 15.5 points per game. He shoots 37% from three-point range with these ancillary scores like Alonzo Dior Connors beginning to step up. I do think that Appalachian State lays the wood here in what I think is going to be a low-scoring game with Old Dominion, just not being able to get anything going whatsoever. Did set my line at a 13.5, went away up to 13 with App State, and in on the under, semi-total at a 125.5, 667, 668 on the betting board. It is Maryland playing us Wisconsin. Wisconsin is an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points, and the last game between 153 to 154. Semi-line at 5. I'm going to be one to lay with Maryland. Maryland is actually a very balanced team. Top 35 team in the country in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And I know that John Paul has a few question marks with this team. I do think that two true bigs can actually be relatively successful in this day and age. You've got Julian Reese along with Derek Queen, who've been able to combine for about 17+ rebounds per game, and this has been one of the most dominant teams with regards to rebound rate in all of college basketball. You do have a Wisconsin team that has Nolan Winter, who's been able to do a solid job, give you about 6 rebounds per contest. Stephen Krall's a true 7-footer. I feel like he's taken a little bit of a setback this year, but still gives you relatively good versatility for a Wisconsin unit that is about 90th in the country with regards to rebound percentage, so they've been able to do a relatively solid job with that regard. Maryland, if you look overall, they're more around about 41st, but doing a nice job not allowing a lot of second and third chances, and Wisconsin not necessarily the world's greatest team at being able to hit the offensive glass. They're reliant much more on just not making mistakes. This is a Wisconsin team that they're a mid-tempo team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They rank number 1 in all of college basketball with their free throw shooting percentage as a collective at 85.3%. Like, it is absolutely remarkable. Each of their top 7 scorers right now shoot at least 80% at the free throw line. Each of their top 6 shoot at least 82.6% at the charity stripe. John Blackwell has really been able to come on. He's actually been their top scorer since the beginning of the month of December with about 16.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. John Tonje has given you 5 boards, 18 points. He shoots 39.5% from three-point range as well. This has been a Wisconsin team that has been very good with their road three-point shooting percentage defense as well. A top 30 team in all of college basketball with opponents shooting less than 28% from three-point range against them in a road/church court venue, so that's been nice to see. But that said, this is a Wisconsin team that, again, they're not going to be able to give themselves a lot of second chances. I do think that Queen and Reese are going to be able to win the battle down low, and with this being a Wisconsin team that I don't think they're going to be able to get good looks from two-point range, and with Maryland being able to get a little bit more out of Jacoby Gillespie has been able to give you double figures, shoots it in the high 30s from three-point range. You've had Ronnie Rice be able to come on a little bit more as well with double figures. I do think that Maryland finds a way to get the job done. Maryland about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that the overall balance does keep this total under, and a lack of second chances for Wisconsin does as well. So did set my total at a 151. I like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 here with Maryland. 669, 670 on the betting board. And it's George Mason playing us at Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago is an 8-point underdog. It's a last game between 132 to 133, and with Loyola Chicago, I did set them as an underdog of 7.5 points. 8 is my minimum by a point here. George Mason has been one of the better defensive teams in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This team is currently clocking in number 12 in the country. As a matter of fact, Loyola Chicago, they're not quite the same defense that we've seen in past years, about 114th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do go up against a George Mason team that has been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. It's a George Mason team that has Darius Maddox giving them 14 plus points per contest, but it's barely shooting above 30% from three-point. George Mason as a whole, they're shooting about 33.2% from the outside. That clocks in 188th in all of college basketball, and it's a Loyola Chicago team that's been a little bit hit or miss from three-point range themselves. They're about 150th with this regard, but do like the fact that you've got Miles Rubin down low, has been able to give you multiple blocks per contest. He's been able to do a nice job holding up there, and Francis Duquesne is also able to give you right around about 6.5 points per contest, but it's big that Jaden Dawson is back in the lineup after he was missing some time in non-conference play, as he, along with Sheldon Edwards, Desmond Watson, these three guys, they've all been able to give you between 12.4 and 12.5 points per contest, and Edwards has been able to shoot 39.5% from three-point shot. For Loyola Chicago, they do face up against the George Mason team that's done a good job of being able to guard the perimeter, of being able to lock things down low, as you've got Jalen Hayes, who's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, but it is a George Mason team that they've got their vulnerabilities in terms of giving the ball away with the 13.5 turnovers per game, and I do think that that's what's going to keep Loyola Chicago relatively lively in this game. This is a total that I did set at a 133.5, so along with taking 8+ here with Loyola Chicago, I do think that you get just enough scoring for the over. I do think that Loyola Chicago is going to be able to turn defense into offense, so do like the over, and I do like the points here with Loyola Chicago. 671, 672 on the card. Here's the game that'll right up. Rhode Island plays us at UMass. UMass is an underdog of 5.5 to 6 points. 155.5 is the total, and I'm going to be taking a shot on the under, as I did set my total 155.5. Starting to see some 156s pop up at a 156 or higher. That does become my buy point on the under, and I would personally rather have a 156 under rather than a 155 over if it comes down to it, but that's what I'm writing up here is Rhode Island. I set them as an 11.5 point favorite. This is a UMass team that just has not been able to get out of their own way offensively, outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of their three-point shooting percentage as well. Shooting 25.3% from three-point range at a road/shoot-score venue. Rhode Island currently the number 2 team in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage defense. This is a Rhode Island team that is 75th overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they should be able to do a pretty rock-solid job down low with David Fuchs being able to give this team 6.5 plus rebounds per game. You've got relatively good versatility with Sebastian Thomas and all that he's able to do. 5.5 assists, 18.5 points, 2 steals, and I swear that when the game has less than 15 seconds remaining, he shoots 100% from the floor. He has been oh so clutch for the team thus far this season. David Green has been able to give you 14.5 points. He shoots about 42.5% from the outside. Now it's a UMass team that has been a top 135 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but that said, this is also a UMass team that is not generating as many turnovers as they did a season ago as well. They're outside the top 100 with that regard, and it's a UMass team that they are actually relatively solid at being able to generate offensive rebounds. Top 75 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound, but even the interior offense are outside the top 275 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage as well. Jalen Curry, Rashul Diggins, these two guys have been able to combine for a little bit north of 29 points per game. Both of these guys shoot about 33% from three-point range, and they're the lone 2 guys on the roster that have attempted more than 3 threes thus far this season. They're shooting above 28% from three-point range. As a matter of fact, above 26.3% from three-point range. That's an issue. Do have Daniel Hankins Samford back in the fold after he missed 5 games earlier this year. He's given the team about 6 boards, 8 points per game, so that's been solid. This has been a team that has been able to do a good job with their interior defense. They're a top 80 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but I mean, for this UMass team, even though they've been pretty rock solid down low. Having some of these guys be able to pull in their rebounds like Daniel Rivera, giving you 12.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. They're just so awful on offense that it's hard to be able to trust in them. And this has been a Rhode Island team that has been looking to push tempo, and for that matter, UMass does as well. UMass, in terms of total possessions per game, this is a bunch that they rank in the top 50 in all of college basketball, especially in a roadside-neutral court venue. If you get these guys in a roadside-neutral court venue, things do crank quite a bit more up-tempo for them. This is a Rhode Island team that, in terms of total possessions per game right now, they're checking in the top 100 as well. But even with that, just because of the lack of outside shooting, I did set my total more around a 155.5, so 156 or higher, and on the under, and willing to lay with UMass. 673, 674 on the betting board. Tempo, we give our to Lane Kiffin go Owls. They play for Charlotte, and Charlotte does find themselves as 9 to 9.5 point underdogs. So it's between 147.5 to 148.5, and I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Charlotte. This has been a Charlotte team, has had a less than tremendous time on the glass, outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. And for Charlotte, they continue to struggle on defense, 275th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are a team that's outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, Temple has cranked up to a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, and they've had some struggles with regards to their defense as well, about 174th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But what continues to have me off-put about this Temple team is that they don't necessarily have a true point guard. Now, it hasn't led to them really turning the ball over too much. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, so that's been relatively solid for them. They do shoot 36% from three-point range, and you've had Jamal Mashburn Jr. give the team 21 points. He's right now shooting 43% from three-point range. Good versatility out of Steve Settle at third. He comes over from Howard. He's at 6'10", able to give you about 6.5 boards, 11 points per contest from three-point range. He's shooting about 40% from three-point range, but this has been also a unit that has given up a lot of wide-open looks from three-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 33.5% from three-point range, and this is a Charlotte team that one thing that they've done well with regards to their defense, they are 29th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. In a roadside shoot court venue, they allow opponents to shoot only about 28.5% from three-point range, so that is a little bit of a leg up that they've got. And you've got Giancarlo Rosado, who's been very good and versatile. He was sort of in the shadow of Vladislav Golden on that Final Four team over at Florida Atlantic a few seasons ago, and now he's been able to get that shine. He's put up some big numbers. He's supplying the team with 11.5 points, 6.5 boards, a little bit over 3 assists per contest with versatility. And north of 6'6", while Nick Graves is able to give you 16.5 points per game. Now, while Charlotte has been able to do a good job of guarding the arc, their own three-point shooting has really lacked. You do have Jashawn Thomas, who shoots 40% from three, supplies the team with 10.5 points per contest, and Rosado along with Robert Braswell both shoot about 35.5% from three. Braswell gives you 11.5 points per contest, but the team's 29.3% three-point shooting. That's outside the top 330 nationally. This has been a team, though, that has atoned for it by only turning the ball over 9.5 times per contest. Top 50 team with regards to ball security. So for Charlotte, lots of good attributes for this team, lots of bad attributes for the team. I do think that they hold in there. I do think that this is a game it's going to be low possession, but it's going to be highly efficient with regards to an offensive side of things, but I just don't know if you get enough possessions for an over. So did my total 146.5 in on the under, and I'm willing to take the points here with Charlotte. 675, 676 on the card. Here's a game that I'll write up. UTSA, meet the Roadrunners, are on the road against Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, a 9-point favorite. Totals between 159 after 160, and I'm writing up the over. I set my total at a 166.5. This Florida Atlantic team is second worst in all of college basketball in opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing them to shoot 39.5% from three. And at home, this goes up to a very grody 47.7% is what they allow opponents to shoot from three-point range at home. No other team is at 44.3% or higher. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think an open gym would provide more resistance than Florida Atlantic with their current three-point shooting defense at home. And you've got a UTSA team that is 310th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. UTSA, they are 44th in terms of total possessions per game in a roadside shoot court venue. Florida Atlantic is looking to run and gun 37th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for UTSA, they do have one of the better scorers they're going to find in all of college basketball. Primo Spears has been absolutely on fire thus far this season, giving the team 21.5 points, 4 assists. He's right now shooting about 34.5% from three-point range, while Marcus Millender, he shoots north of 43.5% from the outside with his 12.5 points per contest. And Mario Monsanto shoots 40+% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with about 11 points per contest. It has been a team that's dealt with a lot of injuries, but Janavia Smith has been able to give the team 8 rebounds per game, while Raekwon Horton throws in there about 6.5 rebounds rebounds per game. Problem is UTSA still giving up a lot of second and third chance opportunities outside the top 250 in terms of percentage of missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound for the opponent. And for this Florida Atlantic team, it's not like they've been able to do a great job of being able to cut teams off from a one and done opportunity. They're outside the top 250 with this regard as well. But this is a Florida Atlantic team that, unlike UTSA, who has a main go-to scorer in Primo Spears, it's a whole is greater than some of its parts sort of outlet, as you've got essentially 8 different guys that give you at least 6.8 points per contest. Caleb Glenn, Trey Carroll, they both give you 12.4 points per contest. They are the main leaders of this charge, as you've got Glenn shooting about 40.5% from three-point range. For this Florida Atlantic team, fewer than 12 turnovers per game for their tempo is actually not too bad. They've been able to do a good job with their interior defense, with Bob Miller being able to supply the team with about 1.8 blocks. Throws in their 35% three-point shooting, 11 points per contest at 6'11", but do you think that when it's all said and done, you do have UTSA holding in there because Florida Atlantic just flat out can't guard to save their lives? Set my line at 8.5, so you're at the 9+. I'm going to be willing to take those points with the UTSA. And with regards to my write-up, I'm in on the over, set my total 166.5, 677, 678 on the betting board. It is Wofford playing us at VMI, and VMI is a 12 to a 12.5 point dog. It's on this game between 142.5 to a 143, and did set my total 143.5. I'm going to be in on this total over. Wofford well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. You do have a pair of teams that rank up well outside the top 240 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for this VMI team, they're more around about 216th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But this has been a Wofford team that has had their difficulties with regards to their defense, but they're starting to pick it up a little bit more offensively. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of the missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound for Wofford. They're shooting from three-point range about 37.5% at home. On the road, this goes down to about 32.5% from the outside. Well, this has been a VMI team that they themselves only shoot about 32% from the outside, but I've been really liking what I've been seeing out of this backcourt. As San Yiziglu has come over from the country of Turkey. He's been able to give you about 8 points per contest, throws in there 4.5 or so assists per game, and then Ricky Bradley along with Agasinas Kadulas. These two guys have been able to combine for over 31 points per contest. Both of these guys combined to shoot about 40% from 3 as well, and they give you about 11 rebounds per game between the two of them. Now, this is a VMI team that they themselves do have some woes on the glass outside the top 175 with regards to their rebound rate, and you do have on the flip side Kyler Filewich, who he's one of the top rebounders in all of college basketball. He's been able to give this Wofford team north of 10 rebounds per game. This has been a Wofford team that has been able to do a good job generating second and third chances with his offensive rebounds. As a matter of fact, 13 offensive rebounds per game for Wofford. That's a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. And then you've got in the backcourt, guy Dylan Bailey who's been able to pick it up from three-point range, shooting about 37.5% from 3, throwing there 12 points per contest. And then the other Bailey and Justin Bailey gives you a little bit less scoring with 9.5 points per contest, but he shoots 50% from three-point range, while Corey Tripp is able to keep it all together as he and Filewich actually combined for 6.5 assists per contest. Filewich, even though he's the team's top rebounder with about 10 rebounds per game, he also throws in there about 3.5 assists per contest as well. Now, with this Wofford team, they do shoot just 64% at the free throw line. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball, and could be very costly to cover here, as I did set Wofford as an 11.5 point favorite, just not willing to quite get there on the 12 to 12.5. This VMI team has been solid at covering all season long, and that free throw shooting could be the difference between a cover and a non-cover, so I'm going to be willing to take 12 plus here with VMI. I did set my total 143.5, also in on this total over 679, 680 on the betting board. It is Mercer, and they play us to the Citadel. The Citadel is an 11 to an 11.5 point dog. Total on this game, you're going to be finding it anywhere between a 143.5 to a 144, and did set my total 144, so you're at a 143.5. That's my max 5 point on the over. You've got a Citadel team that is well outside the top 220 in terms of total possessions per game. They've really slowed themselves down, but I mean, they're playing very slowly, but they're not playing great defense. They are outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Well, this is a Mercer team, and year number 1 under Ryan Ritter, they're looking to run and a gun it. This team is in the top 20 with regards to total possessions per game. You've got a Citadel team that I just quite frankly don't know what they're doing well. They're outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis as well. 326th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well. And then you've got Ahmad Robinson on the flip side, who's been able to do a very good job for this Mercer team. He's able to give you 15 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. Has been a really nice edgy suffer for this team. And this is a Citadel team that they're just looking for any sort of answers with regards to the backcourt or the front court. You've been able to have Brody Fox be able to be the top scorer. He's been able to supply this team with about 16.5 points per contest, and he is the lone guy on the roster. That gives you north of 9.5 points per game. Throws in there 4.5 rebounds per game, and the only real other guy that gives you north of 4.8 rebounds per game on this team is Ole Miss. He comes on over from Florida State. He's been able to do an okay job, being able to maintain for this team about 8.6 rebounds at a block per contest down low, but this is a Citadel team that just in pretty much every aspect of basketball, they're getting absolutely torched. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've been having a rough go of it in terms of taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers on a per-game basis, and this is a Mercer team that they are looking to crank up the tempo a little bit more. They are looking to generate a few more turnovers and some excitement with regards to their three-point shooting, as they only shoot about 33% as a collective, but do have Tyler Johnson, who's been able to shoot about 39.5% from the outside, 15.5 points per game in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. This is a Mercer team that does rank in the top 75 in all of college basketball, many of these being live ball turnovers with about 9.5 steals per game, and it is a Mercer team that they're going to allow a few open looks from three-point range. Right now, opponents are shooting a little bit north of 33% from three-point range against them. That is 221st in all of college basketball. That said, the Citadel just really doesn't have a lot of guys that are able to take advantage of this. They're well outside the top 275 with their own three-point shooting percentage, and I do think that Mercer going to be able to take it to them with Alex Holt being able to give this team 7+ rebounds per game. That should allow this team to be able to win the battle on the glass. This has been a Mercer team that overall has been outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, and this has been a team that has been about 200th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but with the Citadel, they're unable to take care of the ball. I think the Mercer are going to do a nice job turning those turnovers into very good, clean offense. So just set my line at a 16 here at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Mercer, and with regards to the total, at a 143.5 or less in on the over. 681, 682 on the betting board. Chattanooga is on the road against Western Carolina. Western Carolina, an underdog of 10.5 to 11 points, and tonight's game it is 147 to 147.5, and made Chattanooga the 11-point favorite. Don't want to go past the 10.5 that I'm seeing right now, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 10.5. This has been a Chattanooga team that has been really giving it up from three-point range. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, this is a team that's well outside the top 300 nationally, but that said, you've got on the flip side a Western Carolina team that they just are not able to really give you a good, clean offense. They are outside the top 350 in terms of ball security. Turn the ball over north of 16 times per contest. This is a Western Carolina team that they themselves have their warts with regards to their perimeter sort of offense and defense, as Western Carolina right now shooting 27.3% from three-point range. That goes down to 24.9% in a road/neutral court setting. That is a bottom 8 mark in all of college basketball. You've had Bernard Polite do a relatively solid job of giving the team 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, as Western Carolina is able to play relatively even up on the glass. Chattanooga really doesn't have anyone that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, so that works out a little bit well for them. But I mean, that said, it's also a team that's outside the top 270 in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. Polite has been able to give you 14 points per contest, and Cord Sainsbury, if he can get to the free throw line, shoots 95% of the free throw line, 11.5 points per contest. He's only shooting about 30% from 3. As Polite, he shoots 36.5% from 3. Marcus Kell shoots 34% from the outside. Those are the lone two guys on this roster that shoot north of 30% from three-point, while they themselves outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They allow opponents to shoot well north of 34% from the outside. This is a Chattanooga team that they can very much hurt you from distance, as you've got a pair of guys in Trey Bonham along with Hunter Huff who have been able to combine for 25.5 points per contest. Right now, Huff has been able to huff and puff and give you 39.5% three-point shooting. Bonham more around 32.5% from the outside, but both of these guys fold the offense very cleanly with about 2.8 assists per contest. Chattanooga, top 100 team in terms of ball security, only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest, albeit Chattanooga outside the top 310 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, as this is a team that they only grab about 8.5 offensive rebounds per game. You really just don't have a ton down low. As a matter of fact, Sean Cusano, who's been able to give you about 4.8 rebounds per game, one guy on the roster gives you north of 4 boards per contest. That said, this is a Chattanooga team that they should be able to do a rock-solid job holding up in this game against a Western Carolina team that has not been able to flow good, clean offense all season long, but it is a Western Carolina team that they still play at one of the most rapid paces in all of college basketball. Chattanooga is more of a mid-tempo team. Western Carolina, in terms of total possessions per game, right now they are checking in the top 50 in all of college basketball, ranking 49th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Chattanooga to be able to find some open looks. And with this Western Carolina team being a bunch that, in terms of a roadside-neutral court environment, they allow opponents to shoot 34% from 3, and at home they allow opponents to shoot 37.5% from 3-point range. I do think that Chattanooga going to be able to drain those open looks and get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 10.5 here with Chattanooga with that poor 3-point shooting defense of Western Carolina. I also set my total at 49, so I'm also in on the over to go along with Chattanooga, willing to lay up to 10.5 with them. 683, 684 on the betting board. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's at home against Duquesne. Duquesne is an underdog of 9 points, and tonight's game you're going to be finding it at a 136.5 to a 137. It's like St. Joe's as an 8-point favorite, so here at the 9, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Duquesne. Duquesne has been a pretty rock-solid defense. This despite the fact that in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage are well outside the top 275 nationally, but this has been a team that's been able to hold up down low. They generate a few turnovers. They just play some very gritty defense in general. A top 108 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and if you look strictly at a roadside court environment, this is a top 60 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Flip side, you've got a St. Joe's team that has been pretty okay with regards to their defense. Their top 2 scorers have not necessarily shot it well from 3-point range, as you've been able to have Xavier Brown along with Eric Reynolds be able to combine to give this team well north of 30 points per contest, but that said, both of these guys are currently shooting less than 34% from 3-point range. A guy that has really been able to bomb it from 3-point range has actually been Rasheer Fleming. Fleming has been incredible, giving you about 16 points per contest, shoots 40% from 3 at 6'9", 9 rebounds, steal and a half, block and a half per contest, and then Derek Simpson, who comes on over from Rutgers, has been able to give 10 points per contest. This is a bunch that, as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% from 3, and they allow opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range themselves. Not necessarily amazing, not necessarily terrible. That ranks in the top 175 in all of college basketball, and for St. Joe's, this has been a team that has been able to do a better job with regards to their offense at home rather than on the road, though their 3-point shooting defense actually takes a little bit of a tumble when they're at home, allowing opponents to shoot north of 33% from 3-point range, but this is a St. Joe's team that, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, right now they are checking in right around about 98th in all of college basketball, so that's been pretty rock solid for them, and you do have a squad on the flip side in Duquesne that they just have had a tough time being able to float good, clean offense. They are outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do seem to be figuring things out a little bit more. Trey Dinkins being that main go-to scorer for the team. He's been able to supply about 11.5 points per contest. Lone guy that's currently healthy that's given the team double figures, being able to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. And Cameron Crawford has dealt with a little bit of injury this year, but he's shooting 47.5% from the outside. He gives you about 8.5 points per game. It's a team that, as a whole for Duquesne, shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range, and they're pretty solid at being able to generate some offensive rebounds as well. In terms of percentage of their missed shots that do turn into an offensive rebound, this has been a top 115 team in all of college basketball in that regard, as they do rebound in that neighborhood about 31 or so percent of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and has been able to travel relatively well as well. And for the St. Joe's team, they've been a little bit above average with regards to rebounding, but that should be able to keep this Duquesne team relatively lively. And then finding some of these guys like a Kareem Rozier, who doesn't necessarily give you a lot of scoring, but is giving up 4 assists and just a turnover per game. And this Duquesne team, with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, being a top 125 team in all of college basketball, I think that that'll be just enough for them to remain lively in this spot. And I do think that Duquesne, a team that ranks well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, going to slow this game down. Somebody total 136. I like the under, and I'm willing to take the 9 here with Duquesne. 685, 686 on the betting board. You've got Drake again. They play us in Northern Iowa. The Drake finds themselves as an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 122.5, and I set the Drake as a 7.5 point favorite, so now that we're getting a plus, going to be taking a shot here on Northern Iowa. I wrote up the over as well. Somebody told 125.5. I recognize that Drake is slow and control. Both of these teams, as a matter of fact, are outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, but you've got a pair of teams that do like to bomb it from 3-point range. This has been a Drake team that has been allowing opponents to shoot only about 30% from 3-point range. That's the top 55 mark in all of college basketball, but that said, this has been a team that's been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. Or overall field goal shooting percentage is in the top 40 in all of college basketball, and these guys just know their role. Like Bennett Sturts is that do-it-all guy. 17.5 points, 6.5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest. Mitch Biscari is your designated 3-point shooter. Shoots 46.5% for the outside, 12 points per contest, and then Daniel Abreu does a relatively rock-solid job of being able to hit the glass with about 11.5 points, 3 rebounds per game, a relatively solid wing, while Cam Maniwu down low has been able to give you about 6 boards, 8 points per game. But on the flip side, this is a Northern Iowa team that's been a top 40 team in all of college basketball with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at north of 37%. I really like the way that they've been able to flow things with Jacob Hudson being a 6'10", little bit of positionless player with shooting 35% from three, only gives you about 3.5 rebounds per game to go along, so it's 12 points per contest. Meanwhile, it's been Titan Anderson, who's been sort of that do-it-all dynamo. 14.5 points, 6.5 boards, doesn't necessarily pop it well from three-point range, but Trey Campbell shoots 43% from the outside. This is a Northern Iowa team that they will give it up from three-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot overall well north of 34% from three-point range, but if you look at things in a roadside shoot-court environment, Northern Iowa's three-point shooting defense, that goes all the way up to about 37% from the outside, so there certainly should be some open looks here for Drake, and this has been a Drake team that when they've been at home, they've actually allowed opponents to shoot pretty much the same as in a roadside shoot-court venue with regards to their three-point shooting defense as well. Neither of these teams are necessarily ones that turn the ball over a ton, though this is a Drake team that has been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that with the way that Northern Iowa only turns the ball over 10.5 times per game, they do find a way to be able to break through that pressure, be able to find some good looks from three-point range, and be able to get this total over and be able to hold in this game, as I did set my number at a 7.5. This is a Drake team that in a nip and tuck spot at the free throw line, they've been a relatively pedestrian free throw shooting team at 71%, so I'm going to be willing to take those points, and I'm in on this total over as well. 687, 688 on the betting board. Another Missouri Valley Conference game that I'm in on the over on with a write-up. You've got Missouri State on the road against Indiana State. Sycamores, who find themselves as a 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 145.5, and I set my total 155. You've got two teams that are outside the top 285 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, albeit this is an Indiana State team that, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, on offense, they're outside the top 300 with that regard, but this is a Missouri State team that can be a little bit sketchy with regards to generating turnovers. Overall, they are a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they are absolutely giving it up from three-point range. Missouri State allowing opponents to shoot well north of 36% from three-point range. That is outside the top 300 nationally, while they themselves shoot about 36% from three. Des White has been able to supply the team with 15 points. He shoots 39% from the outside. He and Vincent Brady have combined for about 5 assists per contest, and this has been a bunch that has been able to do a relatively okay job with regards to not allowing second and third chances on the glass, but they really do give it up on the interior ranking outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, as well as Zaxton King. He's been able to emerge with regards to his scoring as well. He's now shooting north of 40% from three. He throws in there about 10 points per contest. They should be able to, Missouri State, do a solid job on the glass with Jalen Hampton. Michael Asi Bonoso will be able to combine for just under 14 rebounds per game, and then on the flip side, you do have an Indiana State team that they themselves don't necessarily have the world's greatest, shall we say, interior play, but you do have a guy that's able to bomb it from the outside in Samaj Teal, who comes over from Presbyterian, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. Right now, he's shooting 33.5% from three-point range, while Jaden Daughtry has been able to shoot 38.5% from three, gives the team 13 points per game. It has been an Indiana State team that has been really neither here nor there with regards to three-point shooting. They shoot about 33.7% from the outside, and frankly, they've actually shot it a little bit better from three-point range in a roadside shoot-court environment rather than at home, but they do have some good versatility. Marcus Harding has been at right around about 6'10", able to give the team 8 points, throws in their 5 boards. He's shooting about 35% from three-point range. Kamani Daughtry is also shooting about 35% from three-point range as well. You don't necessarily have a bunch of great three-point shooters. You don't necessarily have a bunch of terrible three-point shooters. The team has been a little bit more judicious with being able to take care of the ball as well, while they themselves allow opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range. Both of these teams should be getting plenty of open looks from three-point range. Indiana State is looking to run it and gun it. They're in the top 20 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Certainly this is not a Missouri State team that's looking to play at warp speed, but there's certainly no slug either. Missouri State right around about 260th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So do think that you get a nice up and down game. Did set Indiana State as a 5-point favorite. This has been a Missouri State team that has been carved up both on the outside and on the inside with regards to their defense. So here at the 4.5, could be able to lay with Indiana State, and with this total, I wrote up the over, set my total at a 155 as we go to 689, 690 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, LSU is playing against Auburn, and Auburn does find themselves as a 12 to a 12.5 point road favorite. Total on this game between 148.5 to a 149, and I wrote up the points with LSU. I set them as a 9.5 point underdog. Auburn getting back G&I Broom is big. He was missing for the last few games. Right now, he's a Wooden Award candidate for my money, as he's been able to give the team 18 plus points. He's throwing in their 10 boards, a block, a steal per contest. He's able to pop it from three-point range, and he's right now the main headliner for a team that has lost just one game. And Right now, they are number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. As after that, you've got Cheney Johnson, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, all give between about 6 to 6.5 points per contest. They had to go a little bit smaller when Broom was out of the fold, so Johnson, who stands right around 6'7", saw a lot of those minutes, but Todd Pettiford has been really good with Chad Baker-Mazara in the backcourt. These two guys combined for about 5 assists per game, as you've actually got, in terms of your leader in facilitation, G.N.I. Broom at 3.2 assists per contest, but it's sort of a whole is greater than some of his parts point guard approach, with Pettiford seeing a little bit more action on the ball, and he's been able to shoot 42% from three-point range. Miles Kelly is about a 43.5% three-point shooter, and this has been an Auburn team that their biggest forward has been their defense. They have been much better at home rather than on the road. At home, they're a top 15 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Outside the top 100 in a roadside-neutral court environment, they should be able to take advantage a little bit of the fact that LSU can be a little bit careless with the ball with regards to their offense. This LSU team is right now turning the ball over nearly 14 times per contest, outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That said, they've been able to do a really good job of being with the glass, being able to give themselves second and third chances. Now, for LSU, the trepidation that you do have, they're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents being able to get second and third chances, are allowing 13.5 offensive rebounds per game. If you look at just the raw rebound numbers, that is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. That's like Cameron Carter. He's able to stuff the stat sheet, 17.5 points, 4 boards. He shoots 39% from three-point range. You've been able to get really good production as well out of Victorious Miller, who's been able to throw in their 10 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. He's been able to come on as the season has been able to go along. And then DJ Bailey has been a stat sheet stuffer, seal and a half, 2.5 assists, 5 boards, 9 points. I really like what I'm seeing out of him. LSU overall, they only shoot about 32% from three-point range, but they do a nice job knifing it on the inside. They're a top 35 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, with the way that this team has been able to do a rock-solid job in terms of being able to guard the arc, allowing opponents to shoot just 31% from three-point range. I think that they're going to hold in there despite the fact that there is some very clear, shall we say, turnover woes with regards to this team. So I did set my line at 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU. LSU is playing at a top 40 mark in terms of total possessions per game, but even with that, I do think that the sloppiness and the turnovers in this game going to lead to an under. Set my total 147.5, like the under, and I do like the place here with LSU. 691, 692 on the betting board. Houston is on the road against West Virginia, and West Virginia does find themselves as a underdog of 7.5 to 8.5 points. So on this game, it is 123 to 123.5. If you look at the last time these two teams played, West Virginia lost that game by double figures, but that was closer than the score indicated, in my opinion. I do think that West Virginia is going to be able to give Houston their best shot. I set my line at 6. I'm going to be willing to take the points. You've got Javon Smalls come up big with 19 points, 5 boards, 5 assists per contest for this West Virginia team, and Eduardo Andre 3000 is able to give you 4+ boards, north of a block per contest. Now, I don't know if they're going to quite win that battle against Joseph Tugler along Juwan Roberts, pair of guys that have been able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game, and this continues to be a Houston team that shoots 39.5% from three-point range. That is a top 12 mark in the country, and Emmanuel Sharp is right now the headliner for that. He's shooting 45% from three-point range. LJ Cryer throws in there 40% from three. He's the top scorer with 13.5 points per contest. Sharp, 13.4 points per game. And then Mylou Suzan has just done a really good job of stepping into that Jamal Shed role. Not quite as much of a scorer as Shed is, but 5 assists, 9.5 points per game. Doesn't quite generate as many steals, but shoots 37.5% from three-point range. As a matter of fact, for this Houston team, among every one of their top 8 scorers that has made at least 1 3 this far this season, they all shoot at least 37.1% from the outside, but this continues to be a West Virginia team that is in the top 40 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This has been a unit that has been able to do a good job of being able to cut teams off from the three-point line as well. West Virginia right now allowing opponents to shoot just 24.7% from three-point range at home. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, and for West Virginia, no doubt about it. The concern is the depth with regards to this team. Tucker DeVries has been out for the last 11 or so games, and that's been an issue, but you continue to have Javon Small coming up big, 19.5 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, shoots 34.9% from three-point range, and Jonathan Boom Boom Powell has really been the guy that has really been standing out to me in terms of stepping up, giving this team right around about 9 points per contest. He shoots in that neighborhood about 37% from three-point range, just giving the team 8+ points in 4 of the last 5 games, and this team has really come and gone as he had 30 minutes in that game against Kansas State, did not score a single point, and that led to a little bit of a rough go of it. You also need to look to Joseph Yusufu for this team, as well as he's been able to have some moments of brightness at that 18-point performance against Colorado, but 4 points ever since then, as he has been a relative nothing burger in their back-to-back losses, so they're going to need to get him going a little bit more. But Amani Hansberry, with his versatility, being able to pull in their 5.5 rebounds per game, I think that that's going to keep West Virginia lively in this game. It's a West Virginia team that really doesn't generate a lot of second and third chances. They are outside the top 250 in terms of percentage of the missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound, but a top 75 team in terms of generating turnovers. Houston has certainly been able to do a rock-solid job of generating turnovers as well, but I feel like with West Virginia's ability to be able to cut off teams from the three-point line, I think that that's going to be able to keep them in this game against a Houston team that has been sharp from three-point range. I think that this game is going to be close enough for a late-game falling, so set by total 126, like the over, and I do like the points here with West Virginia. 693, 694 on the betting board. Here's another game I rub. TCU is on the road against Texas Tech. Texas Tech opens up as a 15-point favorite. They're now between about a 14.5 to a 13.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 137, and I wrote up the points with TCU. Set them as an 11.5 point underdog. This has been a TCU team that has been a little bit wobbly this far this season, but that said, this has been a team that has been able to find their bearings ever since the Frankie Collins injury. Collins going down has certainly been hurting the team, but you've still been able to have Ernest Uday do a really good job on the glass. This is for a TCU team that they are outside the top 175 with regards to rebound percentage, but right now you've got him being able to supply this team with about 8.5 boards per contest. Only gives you about 8 points per game, but also a steal and a half and a block and a half per game. Well, it's been Vashawn Allwet and Noah Reynolds who's really been picking it up in the backcourt. These two guys combined for 24 points per game. It is a TCU team that offensively, they leave something to be desired outside the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but this has been a defense that has done a good job of being able to guard the three-point line, a top 85 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and that's really where the bread is buttered for Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a top 15 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, or shooting as a collective north of 38% from the outside, as JT Toppin has been that main man down low, 16.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and then Chance McMillan continues to shoot 47.5% from three, 15 points per game. The versatility of Darian Williams certainly going to be a challenge for TCU to match up with. 14.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4.5 assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from three, but I do think that they're going to be able to do so. You've had Elijah Hawkins give out 6 assists to just 2 turnovers per game, as this is a Texas Tech team that has been very judicious with the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per game. Rank about 100th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I do think that with the way that TCU has been doing a little bit of better job on the glass, with the way that these transfers have been able to find a little bit more of a role, Zarian White has been able to give you about 10 or so points per contest, that TCU has enough to be able to hold in this game, and TCU starting to slow down games outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. They themselves have certainly been very, shall we say, lackadaisical with regards to their offense, so do think that you're in for a little bit of a lower scoring game. Did set my total 135.5, like the under. And with TCU, I do think that they slow this game down just enough to be able to cover. I wrote up TCU with the points. 695, 696 on the betting board. George Washington, our nation's first president, plays us to Richmond. The Itsy Bitsy Spiders are an 8.5 point underdog. Totals between 137 to 138, and wrote up our nation's first president, said George Washington as an 11.5 point favorite. George Washington has really been a good defense this far this season. Top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've actually got two very slow teams. You knew that Richmond was going to be that coming into the season. Richmond 280th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but George Washington now outside the top 120 in terms of total possessions per game. They're about 124th. It's not like they're playing super duper slow, but compared to where they were last season, they're playing at a rate of about 2.5 to 3 possessions per game slower than they did a season ago. So that has been an interesting little bit of a shift. You've got a George Washington team that has been able to do still a solid job on offense, about 150th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is despite the fact that they've been missing Garrett Johnson all season long. But the big thing for this George Washington team has been what they've been able to get out of Darren Buchanan and his overall versatility. As for Buchanan, he's supplying the team with just under 13.5 points per contest, 7 boards, 3.5 assists. Was missing for a little bit of time earlier in conference play, but he's returned and he's been rock solid, while Rafael Castro is doing a good job banding things down the block and a half, 9 rebounds, 12.5 points. Throws in there a little bit over a steal per game as well. George Washington with a little bit more depth than what we saw a season ago as well. They're now more of an 8-deep sort of team, and they've left something to be desired with their three-point shooting. They're outside the top 300 by shooting about 31% from three, but this three-point shooting defense has been incredible. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 30% from three-point, and they go up against a Richmond team that is right now in a road/neutral court venue shooting a less than 26% from three-point. They're a bottom 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as it's Lonnie Hunt and Dusan Niskovich, who's right now trying to supply all the offense for the team. Niskovich right around about 14 points per contest. Hunt has been your top scorer with 17 points, north of 2 steals per game, but problem is he has been out the last 3 or so weeks. He's expected to be out once again. I handicapped it as if he is going to be out of the fold, and that has meant that Jason Roche has had to step up a little bit more, and he's been legitimately their top 3-point shooter, shooting about 40% from 3-point, 6.5 points per contest, but it's a team that's having to mix and match right now. It's Spasas Yomaglu, who comes on over from UConn. He gives you a little bit of versatility, 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but he only shoots about 26.5% from 3-point. And Richmond, they just failed to generate a second chance. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They still don't turn the ball over too much. They're only turning the ball over 10 times per contest, but in terms of turnovers generated, they're a bottom 55 team in all of college basketball in that regard as well. It has been a Richmond team that just has not been able to get a lot going on offense. The last time this team was able to break through the 67-point plateau, you have to go all the way back to their win on January 4th against UMass. That's back when they still had Delani Hunt in the fold. So do think that George Washington going to be able to play some good, rock-solid defense. I did set my total at a 137.5 as a result. Right now, we're seeing between a 137 to a 138. Personally, I would rather have the 138 under rather than the 137 over. With the way that Richmond is playing in with George Washington, I wrote this up. I'm willing to lay the number, set them as 11.5-point favorite. 697, 698 on the betting board. You've got East Tennessee State on the road against UNC Greensboro. Greensboro does find themselves as a 1.5-point favorite. Total on this game is 137. And with UNCG, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points. So, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. You've got a ETSU team that's been pretty solid on the glass. Top 100 team with regards to their rebound percentage. For ETSU, what has been also very good for the team is the way that they're able to do a nice job in terms of just not allowing second and third chances. This team is about 106th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this Greensboro team, they're right there at about 109th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Greensboro team that you're not going to be able to get cheap 3-point shots against them. UNC Greensboro, 42nd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, defense, and on offense, they shoot 39.7% from 3-point range at home. That is a top 40 mark in all of college basketball as well. For UNC Greensboro, Donovan Atwell has been able to do a nice job being able to supply the team with double figures, and main man that has been able to really make this offense run, in my opinion, has been Ronald Polite, because along with his nearly 13 points per contest, throws in their 3.5 assists per game, all while being able to shoot 46.5% from 3-point range. The top player in terms of overall scoring is Keenan Giles, who's been able to give you 16.5 points, throws in their 2 assists. He's shooting 42% from 3-point range. Now, it is a UNCG team that is going to probably lose the battle on glass against ETSU, but still a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage. This has been a squad that has been pretty good with their interior defense as well, top 125 team in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. And then for ETSU, you do have a much improved 3-point shooting team from a season ago. It's a buggy man, John Buggs III, has come in. He's been able to give the team a little bit over 10 points per contest, shooting 40% from 3-point range. And then you've got Jaden Seymour showing off some really good versatility at 6'9", 17.5 points, 7.5 boards, right now shooting 36.5% from 3-point range. And it is an ETSU team that they do a pretty rock solid job on the glass in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. Top 45 team in all of college basketball, and they've turned into a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers as well, but this team is not necessarily the world's greatest at cutting you off from the outside. This ETSU team is allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood about 33% from 3-point range overall, but that goes to 35.5% away from home. Do think that allows UNCG to find a way to be able to get the job done. And what I think is going to be a bit of a lower scoring affair, semi-total 134.5. I like the under both of these teams outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, and for UNC Greensboro, one to lay up to 4 with them. 699, 700 on the betting board. Florida State plays us to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, 10.5-point underdogs on this game. It is 143, and with Florida State made them a 12-point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Florida State in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. Virginia Tech still looking to find their identity a little bit, because they were really banking on Hyzier Miller being the main point guard for the team. As we know, he is in that gambling scandal that involved Temple last season. Go Owls. So that's kept them out of the fold for the entirety of the season. And for Virginia Tech right now, about 292nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but hasn't really led to a whole heck of a lot of an uptick with regards to their defense. As a matter of fact, they have been diminished with regards to their defense from in past years. Outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's a Virginia Tech team that is allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range about 35.5% in a road/neutral court venue. So do have your issues there. And for Florida State, this is once again what we typically see how this team holds ground themselves some of its parts. You have Jamar Watkins, who is that top scorer. He's able to give you about 18.5 points per contest. Schroeder's in there right around about 4 to 5 rebounds per game, so he's able to do a good job with that regard. But on the Virginia Tech side of things, they are starting to take a little bit of better care of the ball. Still outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but Brandon Rechsteiner is able to get the team north of 3 assists per contest. Shoots it at a relatively okay rate from 3-point range, a little bit above 30%, and Ben Burnham has really been able to burn it up, shooting 47% for 3, 7 points per contest. Was disappointing to begin the season, but this team is right now built around 2 forwards, Toby Lowell, Majalal Poteet. These 2 guys combine for about 23 points per contest, and Lowell shoots 45% from 3-point range, but big fear here is what are they going to be able to do against a Florida State team that has been really good with regards to their defense. They're a top 55 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Can be a little bit hit or miss if they don't generate a turnover because they are a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis with regards to that perimeter defense, but they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from 3-point range. If you specifically take a look at what they're doing at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range, so hasn't been too shabby there. I do think that with Florida State just being able to have so many pieces around Jamir Watkins, who's by far the best player in this game, 18.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. It's very helpful because when Florida State is really at their best, they're going deep into their bench, and this season they've got about 9 different guys that are seeing at least 10.5 minutes per game, 8 different guys that see 14 plus minutes per contest. Even someone like a Boston Old was only giving you about 3.5 points per contest. It's been a relatively good defensive stopper. Justin Thomas has been able to shoot about 39% from 3-point range. You've been able to have Malik Ewan, was the number 1 rated junior college transfer according to JUCOrecruiting.com. He's played the team with 14 points, 8 boards. He's been rock solid down low. I do think that Florida State finds a way to be able to get the job done with that overall depth and just really being able to take it to a Virginia Tech team that doesn't have quite that. So I did set my line at 12. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Florida State. And I do think that this game gets going up and down a little bit more. Virginia Tech has been a little bit more cleanly with the ball, so did set my total 144 in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Florida State. 701, 702 on the betting board. This is another game that I wrote up as you have Virginia on the road against Miami, and Miami is finding themselves as a 1 to 1.5 point favorite, and your totals between 134 to 135, and it's a battle of interim coaches. I am going to be in on the under. I did set my total at a 133.5 simply because Virginia is dead last in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Miami is checking in 353rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That puts me on Virginia in this spot. Miami, by the way, still looking for their first ACC win. I recognize that it's been less than savory for Miami thus far this season as well, but man, this has just been absolutely ridiculous what we've been seeing out of this Miami team. The team has just flat out quit. I will say they showed a little bit of a better effort against Cal a few days ago, taking that game to overtime, but this is a Miami team that they've got Matthew Cleveland and not a lot else right now. Matthew Cleveland about 15 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Been liking what I've been seeing out of him, and then you've got Brandon Johnson who's been able to supply the team with about 7 boards, 8 points per game. I expected more out of him. Coming over from East Carolina, Lynn Kidd down low has been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, but it's a Miami team that they're shooting 32% from 3-point range. That's outside the top 250 nationally. Right now, got Cleveland shooting 40% from 3, and outside of him, there's no other active player that's shooting above 33% from 3-point range, aside from perhaps Paul DeBourget, but he's only been able to see a limited amount of minutes per contest, so that's been a bit of an issue for this team. And on the flip side, you do have yourself a Virginia team that in a road/Uchicore venue, they're actually shooting north of 39% from 3-point range. That is a top 25 mark in all of college basketball, headlined by Isaac McNeely, who's been able to give you 12.5 points per contest, shoots 42.5% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, out of your top 5 scorers for this Virginia team, all but one of them, Jason Kofi, who stands right around about 6'8", has supplied the team with 8 points, 5 rebounds per game. They all shoot about 38.5% from 3-point range or better, with Elijah Saunders really giving the team some nice versatility. He comes in from San Diego State. He has supplied 12 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. He shoots 40% from 3-point range. It is a Virginia team that they are well outside the top 150 themselves in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Just because you give up 64.5 points per game doesn't mean that you're playing great defense, because it just means that they're playing super duper slow right now. But this team has been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percent. Miami, with not having a lot of 3-point shooting, that's been a little bit of an issue. And for Virginia, they're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of total offensive rebounds per game. They're grabbing fewer than 7 offensive rebounds per game, but with Andrew Rhode being able to give this team a little bit of facilitation, and this Miami team, again, just feeling like they have quit and given up on the season, really all parties, the players, the coaches, what have you. I do think that Virginia goes on the road, and they continue this winless streak for Miami, so I do like Virginia on the money line. Wrote that up. I did somebody told 133.5. Again, think that this is going to become a slow slog of a game, so in on the under, and I'm in on Virginia on the money line. 703, 704 on the betting board. It is Fordham on the road against LaSalle. LaSalle explores the cover as a 4.5 point favorite, and your total on this game between 149 to a 150, and with LaSalle, I did set them as a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. For Fordham, they have broken the 66-point plateau once since Christmas, and that was in that triple overtime thriller that we saw against UMass a few weeks ago. And for this Fordham team, they just really don't have a lot of offense outside of Jackie Johnson, who's been solid. 18.5 points. She's about 32.5% from 3-point. She throws in there 2.5 assists per game. And Yusuf Metter has been a relatively okay facilitator. 4 assists, less than 2 turnovers per game, 12.5 points per contest. But it's a team that's only shooting about 33% from 3-point. This team has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but a bottom 75 team in terms of being able to protect the ball as well. They are currently allowing opponents to shoot darn near 35% from 3-point as well. And I think that that's going to be really rough going up against a LaSalle team that does have some relatively good versatility, and a LaSalle team that has been very good with their perimeter defense. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 28.5% from 3-point. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Fordham, typically their bread has been buttered on the defensive side of things. Right now, 298th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Abdul Samilia, who's been able to give you about 5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, and you've been able to get right in that neighborhood about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game out of Roma Dean as well. But I do think that for LaSalle, having what you've got in the backcourt in Corey McKeithen, who comes over from Ryder, nice do-it-all sort of stat sheet suffer, 15.5 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, a steal per game, while shooting 35.5% from 3-point, is going to really be able to light the way and get the job done for a LaSalle team that he's the only out of their top 5 scorers that does shoot above 31.5% from 3-point, but good versatility at Demetrius Lilly, 8.5 points, about 7 boards per contest, like what he's been able to provide down low for the team. And you still have some nice sharpshooters along the outside, as you've been able to have Tunde Valberg Fassi, hopefully I said that correctly. He's a 6'10", a little bit of a combo player. This man will shoot about 35.5% from 3-point, like the way that he's been able to contribute. And Mac Etienne, the former top 75 recruit, has been able to give this team a little bit on the glass as well. I do think that this LaSalle team is going to be able to win from within. This has been a team that has been allowing a lot of open 2-point looks as they're outside the top 300 with that regard, but this has been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and I just flat out don't know if Fordham's going to be able to do their part with this total. I set my total 143.5. I'm in on the under, and with LaSalle, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6.5 with them. 705, 706 on the betting board. North Texas is on the road against Wichita State. Wichita State is a underdog at home of 5 to 5.5 points. 133.5 to 134 is your total. I did set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with North Texas. This is just a Wichita State team that they rely a lot on 3-point shooting. That's always been the style of their coach in Paul Mills, but they just don't have a lot of 3-point shooting right now. As for Wichita State, as a collective, they're shooting 31.5% from 3-point. That's outside the top 280 nationally. And you've got Xavier Bell, shoots 40% from 3, 14.5 points per contest. And then Corey Washington does shoot about 35% from 3. That's the only of their top 8 scorers that shoot above 34.5% from 3, other than Ronnie DeGray. But Ronnie DeGray has only taken, I believe, like 10 threes this far this season because he's only played in 8 games. So that's a big, giant issue as well. They're getting him back. That's helped out a little bit. And Quincy Ballard down low, his 2-point shooting percentage is 77%, 10.5 points, 8 boards, 1.7 blocks per contest, like what he's able to provide there. But this is a North Texas team that is a nice bull constrictor with regards to their defense, because unlike Virginia, they're a team that plays slowly, but they play very efficiently with regards to their defense. Like North Texas, outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game, but if you look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, still number 44 in all of college basketball, and it's traveled even better, as in a road/neutral environment, they're currently a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For North Texas, this has been a team that has been very much reliant upon their 3-point shooting, as well as this team does have Aiden Wright, who's been Mr. Wright for the team. He's been able to give this team a team best 14 points per contest. He doesn't necessarily give you a lot of facilitation or anything like that, but does shoot 42.5% from three-point range. Meanwhile, you've been able to get some really good production out of Jasper Floyd. Really doesn't light it up from three, but 8 points, 4 assists, a little bit over a steal per contest as North Texas, a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This has been a Wichita State team that has been okay at being able to take care of the ball, but with this North Texas team also being a top 30 team in terms of percentage of missed shots that do not result in an offensive rebound for their opponent, I do think that North Texas goes out there, dominates this game, set my line at a 6.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay with North Texas, and with regards to the total, I'm in on the under, set my total at a 130.5, 707, 708 on the betting board. UConn plays us to DePaul, and DePaul does find themselves as a 14.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 143, and I set my line at 16. I'm actually going to be willing to lay with UConn for DePaul. It just feels like these step-up games have not went their way. They've been able to beat up on the lesser teams. When they've had the step-up games, it's been a little bit more difficult, albeit they had a spirited effort about a week and a half ago against Marquette, but this is a UConn team. I think that they're going to be hungry after they played a lot of close games recently. They've lost 2 out of their last 3, but that lone win that they had against Butler, they were up by double figures, and then that very nearly faded into the abyss. Solo Ball has been able to do a really good job of giving the team 14.5 points per contest. He does a nice job being able to flow the offense while being able to shoot about 43.5% from three-point range. Alex Caravan, obviously, as a stat, he suffered nearly 2 blocks, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, 15.5 points per game, all while shooting 40% from three-point range. As for UConn, the offense is not really the problem at this point. UConn continues to be a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. The problem for UConn has really been the defense, as in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this continues to be a team that's outside the top 125 nationally. Now, much better at home rather than on the road. They are giving up more than 17.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot-record environment. And I am for DePaul. You've got some drastic splits with regards to their offense, home to road as well. This is a DePaul team that overall is about 124th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they score more than 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. And for DePaul, they've been able to have Connor Enright do a nice job of being able to flow the offense with about 6.5 assists per game, but does turn the ball over about 3.5 times per contest. For this ball team, they are well outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They do shoot about 36% from three-point range, including having a man in Isaiah Rivera who's been able to shoot 42.5% for 3, 9.5 points per contest. And David Skogman, not necessarily giving you a ton of scoring, but he does give you about 38% three-point shooting. As CJ Gunn, Jacob Myers, these two guys combined for about 24.9 points per contest, but I don't think that they have anyone that matches up really well with Taurus Reed, who's been able to give UConn 8+ rebounds per game. I do think that for this ball team, a team that is outside the top 125 with regards to rebound percentage, that's going to be taking it out of them. And DePaul, they themselves allow opponents to shoot 36+% from three-point range. UConn has not been great with their three-point shooting defense either. A lot of that goes back to Maui, so I do think that there's going to be a lot of open looks and a lot of scoring in this game. As a result, I did set my total at a 144, so you're at the 143, like the over, and I'm willing to lay it here with UConn. Set them as a 16-point favorite. 709, 710 on the betting board. It also plays us to UAB. UAB is an 8.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 152.5, and I did make UAB the favorite of 9.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for UAB. This has been a bunch that has been a top 30 team in terms of percentage of missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. UAB leaving something to be desired defensively, well outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But this is a Tulsa team that isn't doing a whole lot right now. They're about 170th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. If you look specifically at home, they go outside the top 200, and then the offense, I just don't think is going to be able to take advantage of the fact that UAB has been a little bit more lax with regards to that defense. 239th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, I do like what Keston Wills is able to bring to the table. As this is a Tulsa team that has been a little bit rough with regards to their three-point shooting, to say the least, and Wills has been the main man to be able to pop it from three-point range. He's given the team 13.5 points from three-point range. He shoots in that neighborhood about 40% from the outside. I will say Jared Garcia, in the very, very small sample size that we've seen from him this far this season, he's only been able to get out there for 4 games this far this season, but he's been able to shoot it well from 3 when we've seen him. Problem is we haven't seen a whole lot from him. You've got Tyson Archie, who's been able to give you about 11 points per contest, and then Isaiah Barnes throws in their 36% three-point shooting, about 10 points per contest, but it's also well outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage at right around about 32.5% from the outside. And additionally, this has been a Tulsa team that has really given it up with regards to their own three-point shooting defense. They're allowing opponents to shoot 34% from the outside, with a UAB team that has the versatility of Yaxel Lindyborg I think that this is going to be quite a bit of an issue for them as Lundy Borg, he does it all for the team. We talk about Cooper Flagg leading Duke in all 5 major categories. Lundy Borg does that for UAB. 17 points, 10 boards, 4.3 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.6 blocks per contest. That leads the team in every single one of those categories. And he also shoots about 32.5% from three-point range. Tony Tunay has become a 43.5% three-point shooter for the team. You got Christian Coleman, don't call his name, Alejandro Vasquez, combined for about 23 points per contest as well. And this is a UAB team that, though they only shoot about 33.5% from three-points, their percentage of shots that come from two-point range, so they avoid taking threes, is in the top 20 in all of college basketball. I do think the UAB going to be able to find a way to win from within and atone for that big loss that they took against Memphis. UAB certainly playing at warp speed. They're in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game, so do think that you get a nice up and down game in this one. Did somebody total 155.5, like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 9 here with UAB. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Or Roberts hits the road face-off against St. Thomas. St. Thomas does find themselves as 14.5 point favorites. Totals between 157.5 to 158, and with the Tommies, I did set them as a favorite of 17.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This Oral Roberts team has just been ghastly with regards to their defense. They're well outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and the St. Thomas team is a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. Oral Roberts, they are allowing opponents to shoot north of 36% from three-point range. They are 305th in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. It actually goes down to about 35.5% in a roadside shoot score venue, and certainly this is a St. Thomas team that they're going to give up their open looks as well. St. Thomas, well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage, but for Oral Roberts, they're right around about 300th with regards to their rebound percentage as well. St. Thomas, as a matter of fact, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 38.2% from three-point range, but this is also a St. Thomas team that they're by far doing a better job of being able to take care of the ball. They play at a top 175 mark in terms of total possessions per game, yet they're only turning the ball over about 10.3 times per contest. A top 40 team with regards to ball security. You've just got so many different guards out there on the floors. You don't have a single guy for this St. Thomas team with north of 4.5 rebounds per game. The 4.5 boards belongs to Kendall Blue, as he and Drake Jobs both give you 11.5 points per contest, and Dobbs shoots 46% from three. Blue shoots 45% from three-point range. It's a St. Thomas team that in a nip-and-tuck spot, they're a top 30 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage as well, and it goes beyond the three-point shooting percentage as well. Top 30 team with regards to two-point shooting percentage as well. So this team is just executing really well on offense in general. And then on the flip side for Oral Roberts, you do have a guy that's able to really transform the game with Isaac McBride being able to give you about 18.5 points per contest. He's shooting 42% from three-point range. And then you've got Jalen Miller who's been able to shoot 46% from the outside, 8.5 points per contest, but Sam El-Shiki is right now the lone guy on the roster that's been able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and he's dealt with injury all season long. We have seen him over the last two games, but in the 38 minutes that he's played in the last two games, he's given the team 6 rebounds and 9 points. So he does not look to be fully back to 100% status quite yet. Jackson Skipper has been able to give you a little bit from the outside, shooting 40% from three as well, but I mean, it's just absolutely ghastly. Oral Roberts defense, a team that's not really generating any turnovers whatsoever, I think is going to get bludgeoned in this spot. I think that you get a big giant number up with regards to the total. I set my total at a 161.5. I'm in on the over, and with St. Thomas, willing to lay up to 17 with them. 7-13, 7-14 on the betting board. You got Arkansas State on the road against Southern Miss. Southern Miss is a home underdog of 8 points, and John's game it is 149.5. With Arkansas State, I did set them as a favorite of 11 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Arkansas State has really been able to do a much better job with their defense this season. Like, Arkansas State has not really shot it well from three-point range. They're outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. At home, they shoot about 33% from three. That downticks to about 29.5% in a roadside shoot score environment. But Southern Miss is turning the ball over darn near 14.5 times per contest, outside the top 310 in terms of ball security. This has been a Southern Miss team that as well, it's only shooting about 31% from three. That's 303rd in all of college basketball, and if you look at just the raw points scored on a per possession basis, well outside the top 250 for Southern Miss, albeit they do now have Andre Carbello back in fold, who's been in and out all season long. Like, I mean, if you think Andre Carbello is going to be in the fold, you want to check back like an hour before the game, because you just never know with that guy. I mean, one night it's going to be a back issue, another night he's going to get suspended, another night it's going to be a save the whales sort of parade. I mean, my goodness, you just don't know with Andre Carbello if he's actually going to be out there on the floor. But in the 13 games that he's actually played this far this season, he's he's been able to give the team about 10.5 points per contest, and I've just noticed this. When Andre Cabello's out there on the floor, the team plays significantly faster than when he's off the floor, but he's been very muted with his scoring recently, and he's given the team 3+ turnovers in 4 of the last 5 games, so that's been a little bit of an issue. Now, to the credit of Andre Cabello, the team has given up 70 points or fewer in each of the last 2 games that he's played in, so yay, verily there. But that said, this is an Arkansas State team that, with having Taryn Todd, the Todd father, being able to lead the way, giving the team north of 13 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, I do think that they should be able to take it to this squad, as you do have not necessarily one guy that's going to dominate down low, but this has been one of the better rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, because you have 4 different guys: Rashad Marshall, Isaiah Nelson, I mentioned Todd, along Kobe Julian, who will give this team north of 5 rebounds per game. This has been a team that, in terms of percentage of their missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound. Arkansas State top 75 with that regard. Now, they're a bottom 50 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. They do allow 13 offensive rebounds per game, and that should allow this Southern Miss team to be able to get a few second and third chances with Dennis J. Harris, give you about 16.5 points, north of 11 rebounds per game. He shoots 38.5% per 3. He has been absolutely tremendous. And then you've got Kobe Montgomery, who shoots north of 40% per 3 with his 9.5 points per game. But Arkansas State, one of the best perimeter defenses they're going to find in all of college basketball. Right now, they are allowing opponents to shoot only about 28.5% from 3-point range. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. And with the way that this team is turning the ball over left and right, and Arkansas State not necessarily masterminds at generating turnovers, but they're a top 150 team with this regard. I do think that they find a way to get the job done on the road and be able to do so convincingly. I set my number at 11, so going to be willing to lay with Arkansas State. Did set my total 147 as well, with the sloppiness that we're right now seeing out of Southern Miss. So in on the under and willing to lay with Arkansas State. 7-15, 7-16 on the betting board. Omaha hits the road to face off against South Dakota. South Dakota is a home underdog of a point. Total is between 168.5 to a 169, and set my total at a 168.5. Here at a 169, I'm in on the under. I do think that we're going to start to see a few more unders in these South Dakota games, because for South Dakota, they're only shooting about 33% from 3-point range. They're playing at warp speed, top 25 mark in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but it's not like South Dakota is necessarily the most efficient offense out there in all of college basketball. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team is checking in right in that neighborhood above 51st in all of college basketball, which is good, but it's not like amazing to the point where we should be seeing these 170 plus totals. And the big reason why we're seeing these high totals is that they're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, this Nebraska Omaha team, they're about 116th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They have really been able to find it here in conference play. This team was pretty miserable in non-conference play. Here in conference play, if you just gauge conference play and conference play only, I'm willing to bet that Omaha would be a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I don't have any way to be able to parse that out, but I mean, this Omaha team has really been able to get a cooking recently. This has been a squad that has been able to exceed the 80-point plateau in pretty much every single one of their conference games, aside from when they scored 77 on UMKC about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, it's been impressive what we've seen, as Markel Sutton has been the main guy for the team down low. He's able to give you 17 points, 7 boards per contest. It's an Omaha team that shoots about 36.5% from 3-point range, and they themselves do allow their opponents to shoot about 33.5%, 34% from 3-point range, so they're going to give you some open looks, but they should be able to get many more against a South Dakota team as 359th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 38.8% from 3. That goes down to about 37.5% from distance when they are at home, and this is South Dakota team that is very willing to give up a lot of second and third chances, as well as you do have Chase Ferns, who down low is a 7-footer. He's been able to give the team 5 rebounds per game, but I mean, really, other than Paul Bruns, who gives the team 8 points, he's really the lone guy out of their top 5 scorers that shoot above 34% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, on the flip side for Omaha, you've got Jashawn Glover, who's been able to give you 39% 3-point shooting, 8 points per contest. J.J. White shoots 44% from 3. He's able to supply the team with 12 points per game. It's a Nebraska Omaha team that is not going to put a lot of ball pressure on you outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but South Dakota certainly not putting on you a lot of ball pressure. And additionally, with this Omaha team, they've been a top 50 team in terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that do not result in an offensive rebound, allowing only 8.5 offensive rebounds per game. So I do think that Omaha goes on the road, finds a way to get the job done. Set Omaha as a 2.5-point favorite, so won't delay the 1, and I'm in on the under, set my total 168.5, so 169 is my buy point on the under. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. Kansas State plays also Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is an underdog of 7.5 points, 144.5 to 145 is your total, and for Oklahoma State, made them a dog of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 7.5 for Oklahoma State. Just feels like the pieces are not working out right now, and I do think that there's a lot of upside with this coaching staff with regards to the roster in general, as you do have two rough and tumble guys down low in Marcel Xavier along with Abdu Usman, who have combined for 24.5 points, a little bit over 11 rebounds per game, and right now Avery has been able to shoot about 36.5% for three. Usman does shoot 61% for three, but he has attempted fewer than 15 threes as far this season. But like I said, for this Oklahoma State team, they're outside the top 270 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 325 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. Steve Lutz just has not been able to get this defense figured out, and for Kansas State, they themselves have been well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well, so there should be some open looks for a lot of these other guys like Bryce Thompson, who's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range for Oklahoma State, giving you 10-plus points per contest. And then for Kansas State, you got the most versatile player out there on the floor in Coleman Hawkins, 7 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, a block, 10.5 points per contest. Like what I'm seeing there, Brandon Housen shoots just below 40% for three. He's supplying the team with 11.5 points per contest. This has been a Kansas State team that has been lacking the fundamentals a little bit. They are outside the top 250 in terms of their free throw shooting percentage. They turn the ball over 12 times per game, so that's an issue to go along with not being able to guard the three-point line, but this is still a team with a lot of talent. David Nguyen still is giving you good effort, 12.5 points, 7 rebounds per game. Not necessarily bullish on this bunch because you've had Doug McDaniel be very inconsistent with about 4 assists, 7 points per contest. That said, I do think that this is a team that's starting to find their footing a little bit more. That win against West Virginia, I think, is big, and I do think that for Kansas State, they take it to an Oklahoma State squad that just, frankly, has been really bad on defense. I did set my total at a 150 as a result. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7.5 here with Kansas State. 719, 720 on the bank board. Bradley plays us at UIC. Illinois Chicago is an 8 to an 8.5 point underdog. Done on this game, it is 146 after a 147. And with Bradley, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I did set Bradley as a favorite of 9 points, so don't want to go past an 8.5, but going to be willing to lay an 8.5. Bradley has been just so incredible with their three-point shooting all season long. This is a team that has been in the top 5 all year. Currently, they're checking in number 2 as they shoot 40.5% from three-point, and it's just really everyone on this Bradley roster. I think that only one out of their top 8 scorers is currently shooting below 35% from three-point range, and that would be their big man in 6'8", little bit of a combo player, and Almar Allison, who's been able to give you 6 points per contest. He's currently shooting 35.5% from three-point range. So, I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what you're seeing up and down the boulevard from this team as Duke Dean, Zeke Montgomery, these have been the 2 headliners in the backcourt. They're combining for 28 points per game. Dean has been that main facilitator with about 4.3 assists per game. Team does turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, but even though they're a team that they really do base themselves around their three-point shooting, this is also a tough as nails defensive team as well. Top 25 team with regards to opponents' overall field goal shooting percentage, and they don't let you get good looks from three-point range either. They're allowing opponents to shoot well less than 28.5% from three-point range. That's the top 35 mark in all of college basketball. When Bradley is at home, teams are shooting just 27.7% from three-point range. So absolutely love what I'm seeing there. And for this UIC team, they're a top 55 team in terms of total possessions per game. They're looking to run it and gun it, and though the defense has gotten a little bit better as the season has went along, they're outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. For this UIC team, they've been a little bit of a hit-or-miss three-point shooting team recently as well, though when they hit, they're able to hit it at a pretty good rate, as right now they're shooting about 35.8% from three-point range in a road/court venue. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball, but they themselves turn the ball over about 13 times per contest. UIC is going up against a defense that is about 150th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so it's going to be up to Ahmad Henderson along Javon Jackson to be able to flow good, clean offense. They're combining for about 6 assists per contest. Neither guy really shoots the ball from 3, but they do combine for about 24.5 points per game, but Sasa Sani is able to give you about 9 boards, 11 points per game. He's got good versatility down low, while it's been more Jordan Mason along Philip Sabaski, who have been able to combine for about 22 points per contest between the two of them. They've been able to pop it at north of a 40% clip from three-point range. I do think the UIC going to get this game going up and down, but with the way that this UIC team has been giving it up from three-point range, I do think that Bradley carves up this defense, finds a way to be able to get the job done in a pretty high-scoring game. I did set my total 147, between a 146.5 to a 147.5. Personally, I would rather take the 147.5 under. I do recognize that UIC plays at a very rapid clip, and this Bradley team has been great from three-point range. I think that there might be a little bit of regression with that, and this is still a Bradley team that has been a very good defense in their own right. So I'm in on the under. And willing to lay the number here with Bradley. 721, 722 on the card. You've got Xavier on the road against Creighton. Creighton is a favorite of 6 to 6.5 points. And total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 142.5 to a 143.5 with Xavier. I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. I do think that Zach Fremantle coming back, giving the team 5+ rebounds per game, it's going to be big against Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's been able to do a bit of everything, and they've needed him to ever since the Pops Isaacs injury. And this Creighton team has been able to rally around that. They've been doing a relatively solid job here in conference play. They've been able to win 5 straight games as Kalkbrenner has been able to stuff that stat sheet with 17.5 points, 8.5 boards, has now been popping in at about a 38% clip from 3-point range as well. And Steve Ashworth, he's a little bit of a do-it-all guard out there in the backcourt, has turned the ball over about 3.5 times per game, and that's really the big thing for this Creighton team. They're right now losing the turnover battle. They're outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, while they themselves are outside the top 240 with regards to ball security, turn the ball over 13 times per contest, but they've been one of your better three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot less than 30.5% from three-point, top 50 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. And then with Ashworth, even though he does have those 3.5 turnovers per game, 6.5 assists, 16.5 points per game, shoots 36.5% from three-point range, while you've been able to get some good three-point shooting off the bench from Isaac Trout, who they've given him some more minutes, and I've been begging for Creighton to go to their bench a little bit more. They have this year, and Trout, he's been able to give you 5.5 points. He shoots 43% from three-point range as well, but this is a Xavier team that they're able to pocket it and lock it from three-point range as well. Ryan Conwell, he comes on over from Indiana State. He's been their main scorer with about 16 points, shoots from three-point range in that neighborhood about 39% from the outside. And then you've had Davion McKnight be that nice stat sheet sufferer at the point guard spot. 5 assists, 10.5 points, steal and a half per contest, shoots 37.5% from three-point range as well. It's been a Xavier team that has seen a little bit of a drop-off with their three-point shooting percentage when they've been away from home, but this is still a team that overall for the season shooting a little bit north of 38% from three-point range, albeit for Xavier in a roadside shoot score venue that drops to about 34%, while they at home shoot more like 41.5% from three-point range. But again, they're not going to be under duress in this game. It is a Xavier team that's been a little bit hit or miss with regards to their defense, while outside the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but away from home, allowing opponents to shoot just 29.5% from the outside. Do think that they hold in this game. So just set my line at a 3.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Xavier, and did set my total at 149.5. You do have a Xavier team that's looking to run it and gun it, albeit this is a Creighton team that has been a little bit more sloppy with the ball, but it's not like Creighton has been by any means a slug thus far this season, about 186th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Xavier more like 118. So do like the over, and I do like the points here with Xavier. 723, 724 on the board. You've got Evansville, and they play us Murray State, and the Racers of Murray State do find themselves as a road favorite of 4.5 to 5 points. Total on this game is 133, and for Murray State, set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Murray State team has been one of your better perimeter defenses in all of college basketball, albeit it's an Evansville team that they haven't gotten a lot both on the inside or the outside with regards to their offense. But Murray State, top 110 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while they themselves, they shoot about 35% from three-point in a roadside shoot scoring environment. They do shoot about 34.5% from the outside. Meanwhile, this has been an Evansville team that has been quite a bit better at home rather than on the road with regards to their defense, as for Evansville, they're overall allowing opponents to shoot only about 32.5% from three. The one thing about their defense is that they do allow opponents to shoot 34% from the outside when they are at home. And good news for Evansville is that their top scorer from the beginning part of the season, Gabe Pizzato, he's back in the fold. He was missing for north of 6 games for the team, and overall for the campaign, he's been able to give you about 14.5 points per contest, picking up right where he's left off in the last few games. Joshua Hughes, along with Tanner Cuff, have been able to combine for about 11.5 rebounds per game. Here's the problem for Evansville. They do not do a good job of giving themselves any second chance opportunities at points. They're outside the top 340 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They shoot 30% from three, and they're also outside the top 275 with their free throw shooting percentage at 67.3% as well. This has been a team that's been outside the top 180 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. Connor Turnbull, who came over from Butler, has been a part-time starter with about 1.7 blocks per contest, but 6.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. You just expect a little bit more there. It's a Murray State team that really doesn't have that defined top rebounder. I thought that could be Kyron Lindsey, but it's been a little bit of a disappointment this year. He's only been able to give the team about 4.5 boards, 7 points per game, but you've got a quartet of different guys. Charles Harcombe, along with Jacoby White, Kylan Milton, AJ Ferguson, all between 11.8 and 13 points per contest. They distribute their wealth quite well, with Wood being that main facilitator with about 5 assists per contest, shoots 39.5% from three. And Ferguson continues to shoot 42% from three-point range. And Alden Applewhite, he's a little bit more of a reserve that gives you 7 points per contest, but he's a guy with size. He shoots 41% from three-point range with the way that His team is able to guard the perimeter, and with the way that Murray State has been a top 135 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, do think that they go on the road and get the job done. Set my line at 7.5, going to be one to lay with Murray State. Evansville, well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. They just have not been able to get anything going on offense outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. As a result, made my total a 127.5, so in on the under along with laying the number here with Murray State. 725, 726 on the card. You've got St. Mary's on the road against Santa Clara. Santa Clara is a home underdog of 4 points. This game is between 139.5 to 140. I wrote this up, and I like Santa Clara outright on the money line. Now, this has been a St. Mary's team that's been a top 20 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. It's a St. Mary's team that's been able to do a really good job of being able to find good, clean offense away from home. Honestly, at home, they've been a little bit worse than they have been in a roadside church court environment. That said, I do think that this is a spot where Santa Clara, who's now become a top 50 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, finds a way to be able to get the job done. This St. Mary's team is currently a top 3 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they do pull in as an offensive rebound, but this is a Santa Clara team that they themselves are a top 75 team with regards to their overall rebound rate, and we got a pair of guys in Christoph Tilley and Adama Ball that both shoot north of 36% from 3 that give you a combined 27 points per game, and they just have so much size. Ball is 6'6", Tilley is a true 7-footer, and then you've got 6'9" Johnny O'Neal is able to pop it from 3. He's able to give you about 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. You just have all sorts of versatility with this team, and Carlos Stewart, who started out the year a little bit rough after he transferred in from LSU, he's been able to give the team quite a bit of production recently, as well as he's given the team 5 steals, 24 points in the last 2 games as well. And then on the flip side, for the St. Mary's team, you've obviously got Augustus Marasolinas, who has been able to do a very rock-solid job of being able to headline this backcourt. He's been able to be the main scorer with about 14 points, 5.5 assists per game. He does shoot 36% for 3, and it's the St. Mary's team that overall they only shoot about 34.5% from 3 points. They've actually shot it again quite significantly better away from home. And Mikey Lewis has been shooting about 40% from 3 this season. I like what I'm seeing there. Paulius Marsoukas has been able to give you about 8.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. That's been very versatile. That's been very rock solid for this team. But with the St. Mary's team, it's not a squad that's necessarily going to put you under duress and force a lot of turnovers or anything like that. And this has been a team that has been outside the top 125 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. So I do think that Santa Clara going to be able to have a little bit of advantage on the outside, like when I'm seeing Luke Barrett along with Mitchell Saxton down low with a combined 15 rebounds per game. But Santa Clara has the size to be able to match up. I do think that this road trip is going to catch up to St. Mary's in this ordeal. St. Mary's still outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, so set a little bit of a lower total at a 139. So here at the 140 and on the under to go along with Santa Clara on the money line. 727, 728 on the betting board. Illinois State plays us at Belmont. Belmont is an underdog of 3.5 points, 153 to 154.5 is your total line. With Belmont, I did set them as an underdog of 5.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Illinois State. Illinois State continues to be one of the most efficient offenses in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This has been a top 55 team in the country. Meanwhile, Belmont in a roadside shoot court environment, they are currently a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so they have been able to do a tremendous job with that regard. Here's the issue for Belmont. They are nearly 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not to call Illinois State amazing with regards to their defense or anything like that. They're right around about 271st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I mean, it has been truly quite ghastly with regards to this Belmont team. Both of these teams are very good at being able to hit the threes, and both of these teams not so good at being able to guard the arc, as Belmont 3 are in third in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So very interestingly, they're allowing opponents to shoot 39% from 3-point range at home, 32.8% in road or neutral court venues. So I do think that that's going to iron out a little bit more as the season goes along. Meanwhile, for this Illinois State team, they allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range in their home games. Their main 2 headline scorers in Johnny Kinzinger, Chase Walker have been able to combine for 29 points per game, and it's an Illinois State team that's doing a relatively okay job on the glass. They don't grab any offensive rebounds themselves. They are well outside the top 325 in terms of percentage of missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound, but they themselves are a top 15 team in terms of not allowing opponents to get an offensive rebound as well, allowing opponents to only get about 7.5 offensive rebounds per game, and you've been able to have Walker be a big part of that as he's been able to give the team 6 boards per contest. Sultan Banks, Ty Pence, these 2 guys both give you 4+ rebounds per game. You've got a guy in Banks who he's really the lone out of their top, I'm going to call it 8 scorers that shoots below 37.5% from three-point range, but at the same time, he is doling out about 3.5 assists per contest. Does a good job of being able to pull in there a few rebounds, so he's been rock solid with that regard, and this is an Illinois State team that is in the top 100 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. This is a Belmont team that does a pretty good job of being able to flow some good, clean offense as well, and you've been able to get a lot of production as well out of Mr. Jonathan Pierre. He was a 6'9", little bit of a combo player that won a national title over at Division II Nova Southeastern, and he's come in, give the team 13.5 points, shoots 41% for three, 5 assists, 5 rebounds per game, has really transformed this offense. This has been a team as well has gotten a lot out of Tyler Lundblade, who's been able to shoot 44% from three-point range. Brody Peebles, who comes on over from Liberty, he's been able to shoot about 39% from the outside, but again, at three-point shooting defense has been pretty ghastly with regards to this team. It is a Belmont team that's playing relatively even up on the glass as well, but with this Belmont team also being 325th in opponent's two-point shooting percentage, I do think that Illinois State going to be able to nave through, get the job done. This is a Belmont team that's looking to run it and gun it. They're in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. Illinois State actually one of the slower teams in all of college basketball outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but I think that you get a nice, clean, efficiently run game from both offenses, so it's set my total on 157.5, like the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Illinois State, 729, 730 on the betting board. Rutgers is on the road against Northwestern, and Northwestern does find themselves as a 7-point favorite. Totals between 140.5 to 141, and I said Northwestern as a 7.5 point favorite, so right now seeing what we've got, I'm willing to lay the 7 and not a half a point more. You've got Ace Bailey along Dylan Harper, who've been incredible for this Rutgers team. They're combined for north of 39 points per contest, but that said, this has been a Rutgers team that has been just so top heavy all season long, because outside these two guys, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 7.5 points per contest. As Jordan Durcock has been that mean number 3 guy. He does a little bit of everything, gives you a steal, 2.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 7.5 points per game, and Lathon Somerville down low is able to give you 4 rebounds per game, but the Rutgers defense has just fallen off a cliff this year, outside the top 130 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 34% from 3-point range. Their 2-point shooting percentage defense outside the top 240 nationally as well, albeit this has been a better offense, but it's still an offense that's well outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis as well. They're just waiting around for Bailey, who's been able to give you 8 boards, 19.5 points on 39.5% 3-point shooting, or Harper, who gives you 4 assists, 18.5 points per game, to just do something, and you need a little bit more of a team. Now, I will say Northwestern has some similar issues, as you've got 2 guys that really headline this team, as you've got Brooks Barnhizer along with Nick Martinelli being able to combine for about 37.5 points per contest. Barnhizer, your main facilitator, 8.5 boards, 4 assists per game, and Martinelli is that sharpshooter who shoots 41% from 3, but does feel like the ancillary pieces do a little bit more. Jalen Leach shoots 37% from 3, 14 points per contest. Matthew Nicholson only gives you about 4.5 points per game, but throws in there a block, 5.5 rebounds per game. You've also got someone like a Justin Mullins who's able to give you about 3.5 rebounds per game as well. This is a Northwestern team that has been a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, albeit this is a Northwestern team in which you'd like to see the perimeter defense be a little bit better. They are outside the top 140 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but this has been a Northwestern team that has been a little bit better at home rather than on the road with regards to their defense, as this is a Northwestern team that is checking in overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis just within the top 75, but they do give up nearly 14 points fewer per 100 possessions at home. I do think that they get the job done against this Rutgers team. I set my line at a 7.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7, and Northwestern, once again, playing relatively slow in control outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Rutgers has been slowed down quite a bit in conference as well, so set my total 139.5. You're on north of 140 and on the under 731, 732 on the card. You've got Texas on the road against Ole Miss, and Texas is back to being a 6-point underdog. Total on this game, it is 141, and I wrote this one up. I'm in on the over. I set my total at a 146. You do have a Texas team that is a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Ole Miss does a good job of just being able to keep things clean. They're in the top 10 nationally in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, this is a Texas team that, I've seen a Texas side is drop with regards to their offensive production away from home. They are scoring well north of 24 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but I do think that that's going to iron out a little bit here moving forward. And Arthur Kaluma has been a really good game changer for this Texas team. 8 rebounds, 14 points per contest, 2 assists, shoots 45.5% from 3-point range, but he's really the lone guy that's pulling in rebounds for this Texas team. Texas outside the top 250 with regards to percentage of missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound. Now Texas, they do also a nice job of not turning it over. They're a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, on the Ole Miss side of things, It's been a little bit hit or miss with regards to this offense, but you still have a trio of guys in the backcourt that I really like, as you've got Jalen Murray, who's giving you 11.5 points per contest. He's shooting 41.5% for three. Sean Badula, 39% three-point shooter, 14.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest. And Matthew Morrell's been sketchy this year, but still gives you about 11.5 points per contest. His three-point shooting percentage of 31.5%, I think, is going to tick up moving forward. And this has been an Ole Miss team that's been very good at generating turnovers. A top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Problem is, this is a team that's well outside the top 225 with regards to our overall rebound percentage. Ole Miss has been a top 50 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage additionally, but I know that the Malik Dia, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. And Dia, good versatility at 6'8", 10 points, 6 boards, a block per contest, like what I'm seeing there. I do think that for Ole Miss, they do find a way to be able to get the job done here against Texas, and I think that's going to be by 6 points. I very much do agree with the number that we're seeing right now, as we saw some openers of a 6.5. I even saw a few 7s out there as well. If we can get back to a 6.5 or a 7, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Texas, with Trey Johnson just being a transformative scorer with 19 points per contest, shooting it well from three-point range. Additionally, you've had Traymon Mark be able to shoot north of 35% from three. He and Jordan Pope have been able to combine for north of 20 points per contest for this team. I think that that'll be just enough to be able to keep them lively. So, wrote up the over in the spot, so I told 146, and here at anything north of 6, taking the points with Texas. 733, 734 on the betting board. Alabama is on the road against Mississippi State, and Mississippi State finds themselves as a home underdog in this case of 1 point in some spots. Some spots have flipped this to a pick'em as well, and even some other spots at Mississippi State now is a 1 point favorite. So anywhere between a -1 to a +1 on both sides. So on this game it is 166, and with Alabama, I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take Alabama on this pick'em line. I'll try to see what sort of a -105, perhaps even money line I'm able to get there, but I'm going to be taking Alabama in this ordeal just because I do think that with Alabama, even though this has been a squad that has been rough with regards to their interior defense, this is a squad that they do allow opponents to be able to grab a lot of second and third chance opportunities. They are outside the top 275 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, yet they themselves being a top 40 team with regards to percentage of their own missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. That's going to be a win out, and I do think that there's going to be an uptick with regards to this Alabama three-point shooting, and we're starting to see that with Mark Sears, 18 points per game, but back up to shooting about 35% for three-point. And Aiden Holloway has been really good off the bench for this team, 12 points on 41% three-point shooting, and out of your top 4 scorers, you've got 3 of them shooting at least 82.8% at the free throw line in a crunch time spot, so that's something that you do like to see. You've had Cliff Amarui down low be able to give you about 6+ rebounds per game, and Mississippi State has seen a little bit of a departure with regards to rebound rate outside the top 50 with that regard. This has been a Mississippi State team that additionally has been allowing quite a few open looks from three-point range. Mississippi State is allowing opponents to shoot well north of 34% from three-point range, 34.6% to be exact at home, and Alabama is a top 25 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, albeit they've been much better at home rather than on the road. That's always the case with this Alabama team, but for Mississippi State, you've been able to have Josh Hubbard really be able to transform this offense, as he's right now giving the team 16.5 points, 3 assists per contest. Has slowed down a little bit with his scoring recently, but he, Riley Kugel, Claudel Harris, all of your top 3 scorers are all shooting between about 35 to 36% from three-point range. Outside that, not really a ton of outside shooting, but you don't really need. Like Claudel says, this has been a team that has done a really good job of being able to take care of the ball. Top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and while this has been a Mississippi State team that has maybe had a little bit of a departure with regards to rebounding, they're still doing a good job being able to generate second and third chances. A top 40 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. It's a Mississippi State team as well as be able to have, in terms of that rebounding, Keshawn Murphy along with Cameron Matthews combined for a little bit over 14 rebounds per game, 2.5 steals per game out of Matthews as well. So in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this has been a top 55 team with that regard as well. But Alabama is doing a nice job being able to take care of the ball. I do think that both teams are going to be looking to run it and gun it. Both of these teams are in the top 40 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and both of these teams are going to have a few struggles with regards to their defense. Mississippi State, typically one of the more dominant defenses in all of college basketball, outside the top 60 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I'm in on the over, so I told 168.5, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 here with Alabama. 735, 736 on the card. SMU is playing us to Cal. California is an underdog of 11 points, so on this game it is 153. I wrote this up. I set SMU as a 16.5 point favorite, and I am going to be willing to lay this number. It is an SMU team that certainly has been a little bit wobbly with regards to their defense, but the offense has been rock solid. They're a top 25 team with regards to their 3-point 3-point shooting percentage. You've got a Southern Methodist team that has been able to get really good production out of their low post pieces, as well as Matt Cross has been able to give you a little bit over 11 points, 8 boards, shoots 38% from 3-point in terms of percentage of their missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound. SMU is a top 40 team in all of college basketball in that regard. To go along with that good 3-point shooting, Chuck Harris has been able to shoot 44% for the outside. He's given the team 12 points per game. Now, it is an SMU team that they're well outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, but they do a good job of being able to guard on the interior, as they're a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's big against a Cal team that they are looking to have a pair of guys in Mady Sissoko along with Lee Dort be able to control the glass, as these two guys have been able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game. It's a Cal team that they overall only shoot about 33% from 3-point range. Andrei Stojakovic has been their top scorer with about 19 points, shoots 32% from 3-point range, and that Jeremiah Wilkerson step up for the team with 13 points per game, but he's only shooting about 30% from 3-point range as well. And for Cal, ghastly with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, outside the top 340, allowing opponents to shoot 37% from 3-point range, less than savory right there. It is a Cal team that they do a nice job being able to generate second and third chances, top 55 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, but they themselves give up a lot of second and third chances as well. Not a team that's going to put you under any duress whatsoever, outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and with having Kevin Boopy Miller giving you north of 14 points per contest, do think that SMU finds a way to get the job done. What I think is going to be a nice high-scoring expose. I set my total at a 162.5. You've got a Cal team that's relatively mid-tempo, and SMU top 55 team in terms of total possessions per game. I like the over, and I'm willing to lay with SMU. 737, 738 on the betting board. You've got Nevada. They're on the road against Boise St. Boise State has ticked up from being a 6.5 point favorite on the opener to being a 7.5 to an 8 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 137 to 137.5 with Boise State. I set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I was willing to lay the opening number. Now that we're getting to an 8, it's becoming a little bit of a point of no return. Do recognize that this is a Nevada team that's a little bit top heavy with regards to their overall skill sets, and this is a Nevada team that has been very good from 3-point range all season long. Top 35 team, shooting about 37.5% from 3-point range, going up against the Boise State team that now has been a little bit more hit or miss with regards to their 3-point shooting defense. Overall for the season, Boise State is allowing teams to shoot north of 34.5% from the outside, but that goes down to about 29.8% in Boise in a roadside stretch court setting. It's more like 38.5% for 3-point range, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Nevada. With Nevada, they've been a little bit rough at the free throw line, typically one of your best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball, shooting less than 72% at the charity stripe this season. In Nevada, they themselves allowing opponents to shoot 38.7% from the outside, but I do think that they're going to do a good job not allowing Boise State to have a lot of second and third chances. Boise State has Tyson Aguinard, who's got really good versatility at about 6'7", 18 points, 6 boards. He's only shooting about 30% from 3-point range, but Andrew Meadows shoots about 35% from the outside. He supplies the team with 4.5 boards, about 12 points per game, and this Boise State team continues to not allow second and third chance opportunities. A top 20 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. This has been a Boise State team that has been a still top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and while Boise State only shoots about 32.5% from 3 as a collective, they've cut down on the turnovers with bringing in Alvaro Cardenas, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points, 7 assists per contest, while they themselves are a top 30 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. But I do like the main two that you have for Nevada, a pair of guys that give you between about 14.5 to 15.5 points per contest. Nick Davidson along Kobe Sanders. Sanders has been able to shoot about 35% from 3, 14.5 points per contest. Davidson leads the way in rebounding with 6 boards, 15 points per game, while also being able to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. And then Xavier to sell off the ball, shoots 45% from 3. It's really the only thing that he does is pop threes, but I mean, he shoots it at a 45% clip from 3-point range for a Nevada team that is one of the slower tempo teams you're going to find in the country. 336th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Boise State, by no stretch of the imagination, looking to run it and gun at 285th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But the man that really brings things together for Nevada has been Trey Coleman, who's been able to give you 4 assists, about 8.5 points per contest. Have a few other guys like Brandon Love, Tyler Rollison, doing a little bit of this and that, and I do think that that's going to be just enough for Nevada to hold in there. Did somebody total 137.5. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with these teams and their wild 3-point shooting, but right now we're seeing that tick down to a 137 in a few spots. That'd be my back buy point on the over, so we'll take a 137 over, and with this Nevada team, 8+ is a buy point for me on them. 739, 740 on the betting board. Utah State plays us UNLV, and UNLV does find themselves as a underdog of 10 to 10.5 points. Totals between between 144.5 to a 145. You do have a revenge spot here for Utah State. They lost to UNLV a few weeks ago, and I do think that they get their revenge, not by the tune of double figures, so I set my line at an 8.5. Going to be willing to take the points with UNLV. This has been a UNLV team has been up and down, to say the least, as far this season, as right now they're getting it taken to them on the glass. They're well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage, and their main forte has been their three-point shooting percentage. This is a UNLV team that they shoot a little bit over 36% from three-point range. Deaton Thomas has been able to supply the team with 15 points, shoots the 930s from three-point range, and for UNLV, it's really been their road three-point shooting, as the team away from home, they're right now shooting 37.9% from three-point range. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball, and for this Utah State unit, they've had their issues being able to guard the arc when they've been at home. Now, this has been a Utah State team that's been in the top 55 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with two guys, Mesa Fosloff, Ian Martinez, doing a good job, combined for 32.5 points per contest. Fosloff is able to shoot 44% for the outside, 4 assists, 2.5 steals per game. Meanwhile, Martinez, he throws in there about 3 assists per contest, and you've got a lot of guys from there that just sort of mix and match. Uben Gaserse is right now shooting 77.5% from two-point range. Tucker Anderson is throwing in there 7 points per contest. Some good versatility there for a Utah State team that overall, they do shoot about 37.5% from three-point range. They are outside the top 200 in terms of opponent three-point shooting percentage, and additionally, with regards to this Utah State team, at home they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.1% from three, 29.1% in a roadside shoot-to-score venue, so that has been interesting to watch, to say the least. This is a Utah State team that does a relatively good job of being able to clean up the glass as well. This has been a top 100 team with regards to their own rebound percentage, and I do think that for Utah State, they're going to do a solid job there. Top 15 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, but I do think that the outside shooting of UNLV, having guys like a Jalen Bedford, who's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range, throwing in there about 10 points per contest, having Jaden Henley, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest, has been a little bit in and out of the lineup, but when he's been in, and he should be for this one, shooting 42.5% from three, that should be enough, along with UNLV only turning the ball over 10.5 times per game, for them to hold in this game once again. I did set my total at a 142.5, as Utah State has been a team that on the road has really guarded the three well, so I do think that that's going to come around a little bit more at home, and UNLV is well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, so like the under and the points here with UNLV. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 741, 742. You got Syracuse on the road against Samford. Samford is a 10 to 10.5 point favorite total on this game, between 149.5 to a 150, and with Samford, set them as an 11.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Syracuse team that's in the bottom 50 in the country in terms of generating turnovers, and the Samford team has been very clean with regards to their offense. They're a top 50 team in terms of their free throw shooting percentage. They're a top 75 unit in terms of not turning the ball over. They don't necessarily do anything amazing, but what is amazing is what they're able to get out of their 7-footer Maximine Raynaud. He's officially 7'1", 20.5 points, 11.5 boards for three-point range. He's been able to shoot about 35.5% from the outside, while Osiah Sellers gives you 14.5 points per contest on 43% three-point shooting. Jalen Blake's 5.2 assists, so about 2.5 turnovers per game, while being able to supply about 14.5 points per game himself. This has been a Samford team that's also done a nice job of not allowing a lot of second and third chances as well. Samford, a top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, they do give up a little bit more than what you'd like from three-point range, but this has been a Syracuse team that has had all sorts of issues with regards to their defense. Well outside the top 175 thirds of points allowed on a per possession basis. Syracuse on the road is allowing opponents to shoot north of 36% from three-point range. Meanwhile, this is a Samford team that they allow opponents to shoot right around about 31.7% from three-point range. That's a top 95 mark in all of college basketball. And for Syracuse, you do have to like what you're seeing out of J.J. Sarlin. He's come back in the lineup, and he hasn't missed a beat ever since he was out due to injury, as he's right now that top scorer, give you about 18.5 points, 3.5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. But what are you really going to be able to get from the outside from this team? Eddie Lampkin has shot 50% from three, but I think that he's taken 4 threes all season long, and he's the only guy in the roster right now shooting north of 33.5% from the outside. You've had Chris Bell give you about 9.5 points per game. After last year, he shot 40% from three. That's down to about 31.5% from the outside. And to the credit of Eddie Lampkin, he actually does have good versatility. 9 boards, 10.5 points per game. And this has been a Syracuse team that, with regards to their rebound percentage, they've been a top 100 team in all of college basketball in that regard. But that said, this is a Syracuse team that really, other than on the glass, they've lacked in so many different ways. Donnie Freeman has been able to give you 13.5 points, like the fact that he gives you 8 rebounds per game, but still, it's a little bit of a rough state of affairs right now for the Syracuse Syracuse team, and having to go out to the West Coast, I think is going to take it out of them. I did set Samford as an 11.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. So I total 147.5. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-549, 306-550. You've got USC Upstate playing out to Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern is a 3-point road favorite. Total on this game, it is 150 to 150.5, and with Charleston Southern, I did set them as a 5.5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This USC Upstate team just really has not been able to do anything right. I wish I could put it any other way. They're outside the top 3 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and it gets especially ghastly on the defensive side of things. 352nd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a unit that has not been able to find really anything from the outside, as well as for this USC Upstate team. They're right now shooting less than 27.5% from 3-point, as a matter of fact, exactly 27.6% from the outside, but goes down to 27% when they're at home. They do have Mr. Dean, who I like, and his first name is Mr., his last name is Dean, and he has been the dean of this team. 15 points, 5 rebounds per game. He's right now leading the way in both of those categories, but I think he shoots about 21% from 3-point. Brett Harris has to be able to give you about 34.5% 3-point shooting with about 10.5 points per contest, but this is also a unit that's well outside the top 250 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 330 in terms of 2-point shooting percentage, getting just blasted on the glass outside the top 250 with that regard as well. And this is a Charleston Southern team that they themselves are not without their awards, as this has been a bunch that has been well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But Archie Johnson, along with Tajay Kelly, have been really good for this team, as Johnson is right now supplying the team with 15 points, shoots 36.5% for 3-point range. Kelly, 9 boards, 19.5 points on 35.5% 3-point shooting. It is a Charleston Southern team that are allowing opponents to shoot well north of 33.5% for 3-point range, outside the top 225 nationally, and their overall field goal shooting percentage defense is 348. So big time issues there. Turnovers on a per possession basis, they're outside the top 275 with that regard as well, both offensively and defensively. But that said, I do think that College of Charleston, just with the firepower that you've got with regards to these guys, especially with having a little bit of emergence from Davion Bailey, who's been able to now give you about 13.5 points, throws in there a seal and a half per contest. Do think that they find a way to get the job done against this Upstate team. Do think that even though this Charleston Southern team plays very slowly, I think that this is going to be a very inefficient game from both of these teams. So did set my total out of 155.5. I like the over, and with Charleston Southern willing to lay up to 5 with them. 306-551, 306-552. You've got Army, and they play us Colgate. Colgate looks for a minty fresh cover as a 4 to 4.5-point favorite. Totals between 142 to 142.5. And with Colgate, I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. So at a 4.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a Colgate unit that has been able to really emerge in conference play. In non-conference play, they were without Jeff Woodyard. That was their top rebounder with about 7 rebounds per game. Getting him back has made a world of difference for this Colgate team, and we find it time and time again with this team in the Patriot League. They will really struggle outside the conference, and then when they get into conference play, they're all of a sudden able to find it on offense, as this looks like a completely different offense than what we saw in non-conference play. This has been a team that has been able to get past the 73-point barrier in each of their last 5 games, with Nikolai Louis Jacquez being able to lead the way with about 12.5 points per contest. He's been able to do a good job there, and the Jeff Woodyard down low, he's been very versatile. 3 assists, 7.5 rebounds, not a guy that's going to pop it from 3 or anything like that, but leads away with 14.5 points per game. Jalen Cox has not really been able to shoot it well from 3, but does give the team 4 assists per game for a Colgate team that they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest and go up against an Army team that's one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball, being able to generate turnovers. And this is an Army team that in general is going to give you a lot of wide open looks from 3-point range. They themselves have been able to drill quite a few open looks from 3-point range. This is an Army team that overall they're shooting about 34.5% from 3-point range when they are at home. Jalen Rucker has led the way, as he's been one of the top major scorers in the country with about 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists per contest. And then Josh Govins, along with Ryan Curry, have been able to do a good job of working in tandem with a combined 29 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Curry gives you about 4 assists per contest and 42% 3-point shooting. And AJ Hallenpatch just throwing there about 8 rebounds per game. So this Army team is actually built to be able to match up quite well with regards to this Colgate team, but they also shoot 65% the free throw line. That's outside the top 340 nationally. This has been a unit that has given it up quite a bit from 3-point range as well. And additionally, their their 2-point shooting percentage defense, that is outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, with regards to giving it up from three-point range, this Army team is currently allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from three-point range. I think that that's just enough for Colgate to be able to get the job done. I do think that this is a game that comes down to some late game fouling, so I did set my total 145. I do like the over, and I do like Colgate in this spot, willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 306-553, 306-554. Radford is on the road against UNC Asheville. Asheville is a 2.5-point favorite, and your total on this game is between 147.5 to a 148. And with Asheville, I did set them as a 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, for UNC Asheville, if you look at the overall defensive efficiency, the points allowed on a per possession basis, you'll notice they're outside the top 250 with this regard, but I believe that they played a little bit of better defense than what these numbers would indicate. This has been a Nashville team, has been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They have been getting a little bit bludgeoned down low, and that is where the bread is buttered for this Radford team, who they themselves are just 278th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite the fact that they've been able to do a relatively good job on the glass. But do have just a little bit more faith in this UNC Asheville backcourt. As for Radford, you've been able to have Jarvis Moss give this team 14 points per game. He's shooting about 37% from three-point range. And Truth Harris, when he's been out there, he's been able to shoot 52.5% from three-point range. He's chipping in there about 8.5 points per contest, but Moss is the only guy that gives you north of 9 points per contest. Josiah Harris down low has been able to give you about 7.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, like what I'm seeing out of him. And then Isaiah Gaines has also been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game as well. But this is a Radford team that they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 34.5% from three-point range, and it's a bunch that they don't really generate a lot of turnovers outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, this is not some sort of an Asheville team that's going to be batting down the hatches in terms of being able to get a bunch of turnovers either, but that said, this is a squad that has been able to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range, with having Fletcher Abey give you about 44% three-point shooting, 11 points per contest. Josh Banks has been able to throw in there 15 points. He shoots 38% from the outside. I like what I'm seeing out of Jordan Marsh. Not necessarily the world's greatest outside shooter, but 17.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, finds a way to get to the free throw line and shoots about 84.5% when he is at the charity stripe. Again, with this Asheville team, they do a good job guarding the perimeter outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, but they have been much better at being able to generate turnovers than Radford, with Radford just really not having that being in existence for them, for lack of a better term. And additionally, Toya Solomon being able to give the team 7.5 rebounds, a little bit over a block per contest, should be enough for them to be able to hold in their down low along Greg Gant, being able to chip in their 6 rebounds per game. So do like Asheville in this spot, set my line at a 3.5, and you do have a Radford team that's really looking to slow things down, well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Asheville looking to gun it a little bit more, but with that Asheville perimeter defense, I do think that this is going to be a bit of a lower scoring game. Set my total 145.5. I do like the under, and I'm willing to lay it here with Asheville. 306-555, 306-556. Winthrop plays also Presbyterian. Presbyterian, a 7.5-point underdog. 150.5 to 151 is your total. Set Winthrop as a 6-point favorite. I'm willing to take the points with Presbyterian. This is a Winthrop team that guns it. Top 20 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Presbyterian outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Something's got to give, and I do think that things go a little bit more up-tempo. I did set my total at a 154.5. I'm in on the over, but for this Winthrop team, just haven't necessarily loved what I've seen in terms of the overall offense of this team, because they do turn the ball over 13 times per game. They are number 1 in the country in terms of being able to get to the free throw line, attempting more than 30 free throws per game, but they shoot 66% at the free throw line. That's a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball. Now for Winthrop, top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they allow you to shoot 35% per three, and that's where Presbyterian is able to make their hay. Now, when it comes to the Winthrop side of things, KJ Doucette, Colton Telford, they've been able to give you combined about 29.5 points per contest. Doucette shoots 35.5% from three-point range, and then additionally, you've been able to get a little bit of facilitation from the team with about 3.5 assists per contest out of Kason Harrison, who's been able to shoot 37% from three-point range. But then you do take a look on the flip side, and this is a Presbyterian team that has quite a few nice pieces in the backcourt, with the main of them being their 15-point per game score in Kobe Seward. Seward has been able to shoot about 38.5% for three-point, while Mincy also gives you about 14.5 points per contest, shoots 36% for three. He's been able to give you a steal and a half, 4.3 assists per contest as well. And the team is starting to come along for the ride down low with Jalen Peterson, great name, give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. He's had to fill in after Jonah Pierce went out with an injury after 8 games to start the season. This is a Presbyterian team that overall shoots about 37.5% from three-point range. That's the top 50 mark in all of college basketball. They themselves will allow opponents to shoot about 34.5% 39% from the outside, but Winthrop has been sketchy with their three-point shooting. Presbyterian, a top 175 team with regards to rebound percentage. I do think that they hold in there in this game, and I do think that they're going to be able to match this Winthrop team shot for shot. So semi-total at a 154. I like the over, and I do like the points here with Presbyterian. 36-5-57, 36-5-58. Jacksonville is going to be playing us to Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast does find themselves as a underdog of 2 points. Dawn's game, it is 136, and with Dunk City, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. So we'll be looking for a little bit of line movement here. I was seeing this a little bit earlier at a 2.5, and if we can get to a 2.5 or more, that would be my buy point on this Florida Gulf Coast team, as Dunk City has been a team has really looked to slow it down. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, Jacksonville, overall for the season, they've been playing much more quickly than a lot of people would expect, but we have seen this with Jacksonville a few times where they play relatively fast in the non-conference portion of the season. Then in conference play, they really do a nice job of being able to slow it down, and it feels like we're seeing a little bit more of that, as this has been a Jacksonville team that when they've been at home, they've been one of your better defensive units in mid-major college basketball. Overall, 87th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look at home games specifically, they're a top 20 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they've been able to do an absolutely exceptional job there. It is a Jacksonville team that they've got some relatively good size, with having Stephon Payne being able to give this team north of 5.5 rebounds per game. For Jacksonville, it has been a team that has been really a one-trick pony with regards to being able to flow the offense. As you've had Robert McCray, the fourth, do a really good job of supplying the team with about 17 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists per contest. That said, he does turn the ball over about 4 times per game, and he's the only player on the roster that gives you north of 9.5 points per game. As Zimi Nkoji, who comes on over from Dayton, he's got some versatility at 6'7", shoots 37.5% from 3, 5 boards, 9 points per game. This is a Jacksonville team that's been very good in terms of being able to hit the offensive glass as well. Top 75 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. Flip side, you've got a Florida Gulf Coast team that does have Keyshawn Kellman down low, who's been able to give the team about 8.7 rebounds per game. I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. And then you've got quite a few guys that followed actually Pat Chambers on over from Penn State to be able to deliver some good offense for the team, like Davion Johnson, who's been able to give you 14.5 points per contest. Shoots about 34.5% from three-point range, while Xavier McLean, he's shooting right now 38.5% from the outside. He's able to supply the team with about 12 points per game. It has been a Florida Gulf Coast team that has done a okay job of being able to guard the perimeter. They allow opponents to shoot 33% from three-point range. That's neither great nor terrible in terms of opponents' field goal shooting percentage. They're a top 100 team in all of college basketball in that regard, but they generate no turnovers whatsoever in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis outside the top 300 with that regard. So that should allow for some good, clean offense for this Jacksonville team. Do think that you get a slow slog of a game, especially with this being a Florida Gulf Coast team that's dead last in the country in terms of being able to get free throw attempts and makes per game. So I did set my total low at a 132. I'm going to be in on the under. Now with Jacksonville, I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them, 2.5 or more. That becomes my buy point on Dunk City. 306, 559, 306, 560. You've got Queens NC playing us to North Alabama. North Alabama is a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 152 to a 153, and for North Alabama, set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Queens NC team has actually been a top 175 unit in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but do have a North Alabama team that does a nice job flowing good, clean offense. They're a top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. North Alabama, not as amazing of a 3-point shooting team as we've seen in past years outside the top 200 with regards to their overall 3-point shooting percentage. But that said, you've been able to get these guys to really do a nice job of just being able to buy in, be able to generate second chances, and find a way of getting the ball into the interior for their offense, as well as you've had Jakari Lane supply the team with 16.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest. He does shoot about 37% from three-point range, and the three-point shooting percentage is starting to come northward with Daniel Ortiz being able to give the team 12 points per contest. He spent 2 years ago as the top scorer for the team. Last year he was over at UAB. He transfers back in, and took him a little bit of time to get going, but 12 plus points in now 4 out of the last 5 games has really gotten him going. And then down low, you've been able to get about 8.5 rebounds per game out of Tay Fields, who should be able to win that battle down low, and has been able to shoot about 37% from three-point range. Meanwhile, this Queens NC team, they're a team that as a whole, they shoot less than 32.5% from three-point range, but you've been able to get some relatively good production out of Leo Comilio. He comes on over from Fresno State, and he's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 13 points, 5 boards, and at 6'7", gives you some good versatility, shooting 38.5% from three-point. Found one of the best shot blockers in all of college basketball as well. That would be Malcolm Wilson. 3.7 blocks, 5.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest. But if they don't block the shot, they really do allow a lot of open looks as well. And he's only one man out there on the floor. He's a true 7-footer. Has been able to make a nice impact on the game. And then Ajon Anderson has been able to supply the team with about 7.5 points per contest, but has been a little bit in and out of the lineup recently as well, with his Queens NC team being a bunch that doesn't really shoot it well from three-point range. They themselves have been a unit that has been outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's field goal shooting percentage and has been outside the top 175 in terms of their ball security, turned the ball for 13.5 times per contest. I do think that North Alabama finds a way to get the job done on the road. I did set my total at a 152.5, so along with North Alabama, it's a circumstance where here between a 152 to a 153, I'd rather take the 152 over rather than 153 under. Do think that with North Alabama, they start to see some progression with that three-point shooting, and Queens NC always in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. So like the over, and I do like North Alabama. 365-61, 365-62. Stetson is on the road against North Florida. North Florida is a 10 to a 10.5 point favorite, total on this game between 164 to a 165, and with North Florida, set them as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Stetson team has been awful with regards to their defense. They are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not that this is some sort of amazing North Florida team. North Florida right now checking in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 357 in all of college basketball, but at the very least, this is a North Florida team that's able to flow some good, clean offense, and you're just not getting that right now as Stetson. Stetson, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, well outside the top 275 with this regard. Meanwhile, you've got a North Florida team that just has a whole bunch of guys that are willing to bomb it from three-point range. North Florida, as a matter of fact, in terms of their points scored on a per possession basis, number 77 in all of college basketball. Stetson, they've been one of the worst three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. North Florida, they take north of 50% of their shots from three-point range. As a matter of fact, for Stetson, they're about a country average three-point shooting team on offense in their own right. They shoot about 34.5% from three-point range, but that's not going to do them a whole lot of good when they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range well north of 37% from the outside. For the Stetson team out of 364 Division I teams right now, they are checking in right in that neighborhood about 321st, allowing opponents to shoot 38.5% in a road/church court venue. And for the North Florida team, most of your guys that are popping it from three-point range are north of 6'5", and that's just not size that Stetson is going to be able to match up with. Now, I will say this for Stetson, they've been able to get some relatively good production in the form of about 16 points per contest out of Makai Elson, who's been able to shoot about 39.5% from three-point range. Just don't have anyone that's able to give you a lot of rebounding as Josh Massey and Abraham Okenka both give you about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game, and they are your leaders on the glass. The Stetson team, in terms of percentage of missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound, they are outside the top 325 with that regard, and in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, they are well outside the top 300 with that regard as well. Meanwhile, you've got a North Florida team that they themselves do not necessarily do the world's greatest job, but be able to haul in their offensive rebounds. They're outside the top 125 in terms of percentage of missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound, but you've got Josh Harris, who's right now shooting 47.5% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 14.5 points per contest. He stands right around about 6'8" or so. Josiah Miles, who's stands 6'6", he's their top scorer. Shoots only about 34% from three, and I say only loosely, as he's been able to give the team 15 points per contest, and that's because Liam Murphy, who stands about 6'7", he gives you about 12 points per contest. He's shooting 43% from three-point range, and this has been a squad in North Florida that's been a top 50 team in terms of field turnovers on a per possession basis. Do think that they take it to Stetson in this spot and put up a big giant number. So this on my line at a 16.5. I'm willing to lay it in. With regards to the total, set mine at a 164.5. Right now we're between a 164 to a 165. Personally, I would rather take the 164 over rather than a 165 under with how ghastly this Stetson defense has been. So like the over, and I do like North Florida in this spot. Through a 6.563, through a 6.564. Gardner Webb is going to be playing us at Longwood. Longwood is a 1.5 point road favorite. Total on this game between 149 to a 149.5. With Longwood, I did set them as a favorite of 1.5 points. So right now we're trying to see if we can get this down to more like a pick-em / a -1, as right now I was seeing a little bit earlier a -1 out there, and that would be my max lay with regards to Longwood. This is a Gardner Webb team that's just hard to trust in them late in games because they shoot well south of 68% at the free throw line. They've been a bottom 75 in all of college basketball in that regard for many years, and that has not changed under the new tutelage of Jeremy Luther. He comes in after being a assistant coach for many, many years and has brought with him a lot of guys that previously transferred out of the program. Jermaine Mann, Anthony Selden. These are two guys that are boomer countering transfers that have been able to give the team about 26.5 points per contest. They really don't pop it well from three. That's why you've got Gerald Simmons shooting about 41% for three, 16 points per contest. And then Isaiah Richards down low has been a dominant rebounder, 7.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. That is very much the identity of Gardner-Webb, as they are a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. But this is also a Gardner-Webb team that's outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They've actually done a pretty solid job being able to hold up from the outside. Gardner-Webb right now allowing opponents to shoot about 31.8% from three-point range. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball. But this is a Longwood team that they really don't shoot it well from three-point range, but they've been able to do a good job themselves of being able to limit a lot of distance opportunities, as this is a Longwood team that is very much looking to be able to make their hay on the glass. This is a team that is in the top 75 with regards to rebound percentage. This despite the fact that they really don't have anyone that gives them north of 5 rebounds per game. Elijah Tucker is 4.8 rebounds per game. Right now leads the way, but Michael Christmas, Kobe Garland, they've been able to combine for 24 points per contest. Garland has been your main facilitator with about 4.8 assists per game. And Christmas, well, it has been Christmas from the outside, from shooting 35% for three as a 6'6", a little bit of a combo player. Tyrell Luch has helped out in the backcourt, giving 3 assists per game, and this is a Longwood team that, while they do turn the ball over 12 times per contest, they're a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, doing a good job playing some rough and tumble defense, and I do think that Longwood defense that is well inside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis wins out here. I did sell Longwood as a 1.5 point favorite, so I'd be willing to lay up to 1 there, and I did sell my total at a 145.5 as well. This is a Longwood team that, while they are a little bit more of an up-tempo team, I do think they get just enough defense for an under. So I'm going to lay the 1 here with Longwood, and I'm in on this total under as well. 365.65, 365.66. Lafayette plays us American. American is a pick'em to a 1-point dog. Total on this game, it is between 131 to 131.5, and with American, I did set them as an underdog of 2.5 points. So going to be one to lay the 1/ take Lafayette as a pick'em for American. The big concern for this team is just flat out the defense. They are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this American team does allow a lot of open looks from three-point range. In a roadside shoot-to-corner environment, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.3% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Lafayette, they allow opponents to shoot about 32.5% from three-point range when they are at home. Now, American has some good versatility, as Mark Rogers is a guy that stands right around about 6'8", and he's been able to shoot 35 to 36% from three-point range. He's been able to slide the team with 16 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Additionally, Colin Smalls, Elijah Stevens, these two guys in the backcourt have been able to combine for about 22 points per game, both shoot north of 80%. The free throw line, Stevens shoots 37.5% from three with his 4 assists per contest. And American does a good job of being able to keep things relatively clean with regards to their possessions. They only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per game, but in terms of percentage of their missed shots, they become an offensive rebound outside the top 300 with that regard, and that's going to be an issue when they go up against the true 7-footer in Justin Vanderbond. Vanderbond in the top 15 in all of college basketball with regards to block shots per game. 3.1 blocks to go along with 12 points per game. And then you've got Alex Shulkin, who's been really lighting it up from the outside. As a matter of fact, he and Andrew Phillips both shoot north of 47.5% for three. Phillips throws in there 9.5 points per game. Shulkin, he's been able to give this team more like 11.5 points per contest. So these guys have been able to do a tremendous job of being able to give this team something from the outside. This is a Lafayette team that certainly has been up and down with regards to their defense, while outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but with having these guys being able to circle from three-point range, with American just really not being a great team on the glass, albeit this is a Lafayette team that's outside the top 225 with regards to rebound percentage, but this is a Lafayette team where the whole is very much greater than the sum of its parts. They've been dealing with a few injuries, but just time and time again, they've been able to find a way to be able to have a 10-man rotation, and I do think that that's going to take it out of American in this spot, and I do think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. Both of these teams fall outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Made my total 130.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the 1 here with Lafayette. Shake them as a pick 'em. 365.67, 365.68. You've got Lehigh, and they play us to Navy. Navy does find themselves as an underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. Total on this game between 138.5 to 139. Made Lehigh the 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Navy has seen a little bit of a departure with regards to their defense, well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range. Not the world's worst percentage there, and I do like what Donovan Draper is able to bring for this team down low. He's been able to get the team north of 7 rebounds per game, and this is an Navy team that additionally has been able to get some good production in the backcourt out of Austin Mangini. 17.5 points per game, shoots about 39% from three-point, shows in their 4.3 assists per game, and then you've had Aiden Coe be able to supply 9.5 rebounds per game in terms of offensive rebounds, he's been very dominant with that regard, as it's an Navy team that is in the top 125 in terms of percentage of missed shots that do not become an offensive rebound for their opponent. That said, this is a team that's not generating as many turnovers as they have in past years, ball outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And this is a Lehigh team that is a little bit top heavy. They've been dealing with an injury to their top scorer in Keith Higgins that has certainly been hurting them, as he's right now for the season giving the team 18 points, 5 rebounds per game. They've been missing him really since the turn of the new year, but that's that Tyler Whitney-Sydney. He's done a really nice job of being able to fill in, give the team 13 points from three-point range. He's shooting in that neighborhood about 35% from the outside, and another guy that's been able to step up, give the team something down low that they've really needed is Hank Alvey. He's a 6'9" freshman that's right now supplying the team with about 4.5 rebounds per game. Has been able to do a really good job of upping his game recently with 7+ points each out of the last 3 games. So when they've needed that offensive pop, he's been able to bring it. And then nice here, Whitlock has been able to give you about 9.5 points per contest as well. It's very much holds greater than some of its parts with Lehigh, a bottom 15 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but still a team that even without Higgins in the fold, they've been able to shoot it really well from three-point range. Shooting is collective about 36.5% from three-point range. That it sends up to 37% when they are at home, and this is an Navy team that I just don't think that they're going to be able to match that production, as they only shoot about 31.5% in a roadside shoot court environment. This has been a Lehigh team that and certainly allowed some open looks of their own. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 32% from three-point range on the inside. They're outside the top 240 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. It is a Lehigh team that has been outside the top 250, though, in terms of total possessions per game. So did set my total out of 138 here at the 139. Just don't think that you get enough possessions for and over. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on this total under. And with Lehigh, did set them as a 4-point favorite. So we'll lay the number 306.569, 306.570. Bucknell plays us at Loyola, Maryland. Loyola, Maryland is an underdog of 4.5 to 5.5 points. Charleston game is 138, and with Bucknell, I could only set them as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. This is a Loyola Maryland team that certainly leaves a little bit of something to be desired with their perimeter offense, for lack of a better term. They're 287th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, but they shoot 27% from three-point range at home. This actually goes up to about 33.9% in a roadside shoot court venue, and Bucknell is outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they've just turned the ball over left and right. This team has turned the ball over 14 times per contest. They did have at the beginning part of the year Alvin Edmonds as their main facilitator. He's overall for the season only giving you about 2.5 assists per contest as he got injured, and then Josh Bosco became that main point guard. He's given the team 4 boards, 4 assists, 15.5 points per contest, shoots about 37.5% from three-point range, but they've been without Ian Mota, a 6'6" combo player that shoots 43+% from three-point range, and that is clearly taken out of this team in general. Noah Williamson, that true 7-footer, has been rock solid down low. He's been able to give the team 6.5 boards, 16 points per game, and this is a Bucknell team that does rank in the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, as they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 33.5% from three-point range. This has been a Loyola Maryland team that has been a little bit sketchy with regards to their perimeter defense. Right now with Loyola Maryland, they're allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood about 35.5% from three-point range, but that said, they allow opponents to shoot 38.4% from three-point range at home, more like 32.8% in a roadside shoot court venue, which I find to be very fascinating. Meanwhile, Bucknell is allowing opponents to shoot just 30.5% from three-point range when they are at home, so I do think that this is going to be a very interesting case for Bucknell. And with Loyola Maryland, they've been able to have Milos Ilic be able to do a nice job, give you versatility, 15+ points, 7+ rebounds per game, actually closer to about 9 rebounds per game, and then Braden Speed has been able to throw in there about 3 assists per game for Loyola Maryland. It's just been all about mixing and matching around these two guys, and you've been able to have Jordan Stemke be able to step up to the plate, give the team 12.5 points per contest, shoots about 33% from three-point range, and then additionally with Chris Kumezka being out of the fold, he was shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. They've had to find a few other pieces to be able to accent what they're able to get in the backcourt, and they've been able to find that with Tyson Commander, taking a little bit more hold of the offense, and then Jacob Thursiu, hopefully I said that correctly, comes in from Wyoming. He's been able to supply about 11.5 points per contest at 6'4". He's right now giving the team a little bit from the outside at about 32% for 3 and a steal and a half. I do think that there's going to be quite a few turnovers in this game. It's going to be a little bit sloppy, so I did set my total at a 137.5, like the under, and I'd like the points here at Loyola Maryland, and we wrap things up with 306.571, 306.572. West Georgia is on the road against Central Arkansas, and Central Arkansas does find themselves as a favorite of 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game between 141 to 141.5, and with Central Arkansas, I made them a favorite of just 2 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with West Georgia. Central Arkansas continues to be a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and The defense has honestly been a little bit better this year, but I mean, it's still 287th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, you have a West Georgia team that, in terms of rebound rate, points scored, and points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 in all of these categories. So that's been not so great, but they might have actually the most versatile player in this game, as they've got a 6'6" combo player that comes in from the great state of Wisconsin by the name of Sheldon Williams-Dryden, who's been able to give you about 17 points, 7.5 boards per contest. Not going to go out and pop it from three-point range, but you've got a little bit of three-point shooting out of Ricky Ballard, who's been able to give you 7.5 points. He shoots north of 40% from three-point range. West Georgia as a whole, they're only shooting about 30.5% from three-point range, but honestly, that's a little bit better than what the Central Arkansas team has been able to do. Central Arkansas has Lane Taylor, who's been able to do a solid job supplying 17.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, and he shoots 34% from three. He's the only guy on the roster that shoots above 33% from three-point range. That's collective Central Arkansas. 28.6% three-point shooting. That's a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball for Central Arkansas. While they are a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that turn into an offensive rebound, they still have a negative rebound rate as well. This has been a team that has allowed opponents to shoot 37% from three-point range. That's a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball as well, and this is a West Georgia team that, if they're looking to get inside, Central Arkansas right around about 300th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and with West Georgia and the way that they have shot from three, they certainly are going to be looking to do quite a bit of that. And for West Georgia, they've been able to hold on to the ball a little bit better. They're only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. This is a Central Arkansas team that has been very hit or miss with regards to the facilitation, with Brandon Fajemi being able to give you about 4.5 assists, throws in their 4.5 boards, 10 points per game, and Elias Cato has been able to give you 15 points per game as well. But that lack of outside shooting, I think, is really going to be a hindrance in this case. And with Central Arkansas not being able to guard the interior as well, I do think that allows West Georgia to be able to hold in there. Did sell my total at 146. Central Arkansas back inside the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game. So do like the over, and I do like this West Georgia team catching the points, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Sean Paul over there at the Field of 68 for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @JDN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to on this podcast via the 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.